Welcome to Pass the Beat number 4, this time with David Osei. And we've also got Harvey Drums. As usual, add your own flavor to it. Post your video online and tag Urban Science. Use the hashtag #PassTheBeat. Also, we've been putting a list of recommendations on the Google Drive of different software to use, as well as some links to tutorials and all this kind of thing. And if you have any other software suggestions, please do send us so we can share this with other people. We've also started an artist interview series that's going to take place every single Thursday and feature members of Urban Science. Find them live on Facebook as well as on YouTube. Speaking of YouTube, we have been updating archiving. You can find many old Cypher sessions for your enjoyment. So that's it. Send us your new versions of Pass the Beat number 4. Very interested in seeing what y'all come up with. Have a good one.
Dans tous les liquides que l'on boit, si le ciel tombe, que la mer monte, ça ne sera que justice. Y'a trop d'orgueil dans les hommes actions, frère, l'être humain n'est que caprice.
Welcome to Pass the Beat number 4, this time with David Osei. And we've also got Harvey Drums. As usual, add your own flavor to it. Post your video online and tag Urban Science. Use the hashtag #PassTheBeat. Also, we've been putting a list of recommendations on the Google Drive of different software to use, as well as some links to tutorials and all this kind of thing. And if you have any other software suggestions, please do send us so we can share this with other people. We've also started an artist interview series that's going to take place every single Thursday and feature members of Urban Science. Find them live on Facebook as well as on YouTube. Speaking of YouTube, we have been updating archiving. You can find many old Cypher sessions for your enjoyment. So that's it. Send us your new versions of Pass the Beat number 4. Very interested in seeing what y'all come up with. Have a good one.
Dans tous les liquides que l'on boit, si le ciel tombe, que la mer monte, ça ne sera que justice. Y'a trop d'orgueil dans les hommes actions, frère, l'être humain n'est que caprice.
Welcome to Pass the Beat number 4, this time with David Osei. And we've also got Harvey Drums. As usual, add your own flavor to it. Post your video online and tag Urban Science. Use the hashtag #PassTheBeat. Also, we've been putting a list of recommendations on the Google Drive of different software to use, as well as some links to tutorials and all this kind of thing. And if you have any other software suggestions, please do send us so we can share this with other people. We've also started an artist interview series that's going to take place every single Thursday and feature members of Urban Science. Find them live on Facebook as well as on YouTube. Speaking of YouTube, we have been updating archive, and you can find many old Cypher sessions for your enjoyment. So that's it. Send us your new versions of Pass the Beat number 4. Very interested in seeing what y'all come up with. Have a good one.
Si le ciel tombe, que la mer monte, ça ne sera que justice. Y'a trop d'orgueil dans les jeunes actions, frère, l'être humain n'est que caprice.
Welcome to Pass the Beat number 4, this time with David Osei. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 8th edition of our The Process interview series. First, I'd like to thank very much the people who have been sending in donations. Thank you so much, actually, to Serenity. Serenity put in a donation. I don't know if people know, but Serenity is a nurse, and she's working in the health sector. And I guess she's been watching these, and she put in a very sizable and very appreciated donation. Thank you very much, Serenity. And thank you to everybody who's been donating. Franco Proietti, Kelly Kalia. And also thank you to our fans who voted for us in the Best of Montreal poll. Yeah, that's very appreciated. At 10 p.m., Freddie V will have his live stream on Instagram. That's at Freddie V Music with Tanika Charles tonight. So if you feel like switching between us and Freddie, you got a couple of options tonight. As always, please feel free to ask questions, because we can't really see the questions, or can't see people joining the stream, but we can see you if you ask questions. If you throw a little like or whatever, we can see it. So please do that. My guest tonight is, first of all, it's a pleasure to have him. It's been a while since I've had this the pleasure of speaking to and seeing this gentleman. His name is Butta Beats. He is a multilingual MC, singer, drummer, beatboxer, beatmaker, producer. You may know him with Urban Science Cypher as an MC, host, sometimes doing double drums with Teacup. You might know him as a drummer, an MC, beatmaker, producer with Pneumatic Massive. You might know him as an educator, community worker with Project Word at James Ling High School, amongst other places. And of course, he's a father of 2 wonderful children. Butta Beats has a very deep and interesting history that I'm sure that we're going to get into, from his upbringing to his education to his career as performer, songwriter, work as a youth educator. However, I, Vincent Stephen-Ong, leader of Urban Science, think that above all, the most important piece of information that anybody needs to know everything there is to know about Butta Beats, is that he is a Pisces. He's a Pisces. That is the most important thing to know. For the next 3 hours, we'll be talking about the implications of Butta's astrological sign, and we'll be getting into that. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, Butta Beats! Oh no, it's not working. I'll fix this. It's doing something weird. Butta, nice to have you here. I've fixed your... Yes, I can. I just, you know what? I'm going to fix this while I speak to you, because it's going to be a little bit confusing if I don't. Yes, thank you to everybody for being here. So I want to talk about the very first time. Actually, I'm going to switch to me for a second. So the very first time that Butta and I performed together, I'm not even sure Butta knows when that was. And I have discovered that it was one day before my 35th birthday, May 1st, 2010. May 14th, 2010. It was an Intimate Sky sound clash And Butta was recovering from a rather terrible incident and was on stage in full crutches. And I'm going to play a little bit of this while Butta gives a little background on himself and this experience. Do you remember this? It was fun times. It was fun times. I'm just fixing your... From back in the day. We got Kim Zombik and Catalyst. In the background, we got the horns. I'm like behind Jason. Modibo's there. Bird, yeah. I think it's Jordan on guitar. What's that? Yeah. Parker Spur on the keys. Yeah. I can't see who's on bass. He's on the other side. But or it could have been Digal. I don't remember. Right, maybe. I don't remember how that one went. Okay, I think I fixed the thingamabobber now. This is back in the day. Back in the day. So I remember doing that, and it was like the first time that I'd ever seen anybody in Pneumatic perform and met anybody in Pneumatic. I was like, who the fuck are these crazy ass people? I had no idea what was going on. You know, we kind of went from there. I believe my first actual gig was at Jazz Fest, when you guys had like 3 nights at Jazz Fest. This exactly, yeah. M2. It's M2 of M-Tellus. Yeah. And of course we've been there with Urban Science the last couple of years. Yeah, so I'm gonna kind of... There you go. Yeah, Nomadic Massive may have ruined your rap career, but it totally bolstered my rap. Well, I'm not rapping, but my hip hop career, let's say. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So I'm gonna kind of pull a little bit of a Nardwar here and ask you. That was already a Nardwar, I think. I guess I should have been like, your name is Butta? Butta? No, you don't. You're supposed to say Beats. Butta? There you go. And tell me, right off the bat, I've got a gift for you. That's the Nardwar thing. And it is creamy matte lip color. Can you tell me what company made this creamy matte lip color? Can you see what the company is? Bobby Brown. And you know what? I have another gift for you, bud. I have another gift for you. An autographed photo of Millie Bobby Brown from Stranger Fruits. Not Stranger Fruits, Stranger Things. Can you tell me a little bit about this, Bobby Brown? Absolutely. Yeah. Mhm. One of the few outlets. I was... Wow. Yeah, this for me was like the beginning of high school. Was I had a mixtape that a friend put together that had My Prerogative, which I believe is on. Yeah, yeah, it totally is. Yeah, yeah. I had My Prerogative and like a bunch of others. It definitely had Rhythm Nation stuff. Yeah, and I'm sure it had Dum Dum Cool. Right. Yeah. I don't know if I can see you in this suit. I don't know. I mean, you can rock a suit, but I don't know about this one. I don't know. This has got some serious shoulder action going on here. But it's, that's it. You got a little accentuation there. A little accentuation. But yeah, that's true. We were talking about this, I think, a couple of weeks ago with Chris Carniello, talking about like the way there's kind of this resurgence. Like we kind of went through a period a few years ago where all the production was like 100% computers or very heavily computers, and like in the last couple of years, we've been coming back again to have like, you know, digital production with real live instruments put on top and all that. And I'm obviously a big fan of that. I don't like the coldness of pure computer productions, you know. um sure. Yeah. Hmm. Hmm. What is your feeling on that? Like, because I remember when uh well, yeah, what is your feeling on that? Hmm. Right. Well, I think, well, that's it. Like I. Mhm. Well, it's yeah, and I think it's like doing your homework, you know. Yeah. Well, I think it's like doing your homework. It's like I mean, like, cultural appropriation is a whole huge subject. But it's like if you're not recognizing where the music that you're doing came from, and if you're just like taking it completely out of context and not learning about it, you know, then that would definitely be cultural appropriation. But I don't feel that is the case with him. Like he's really, it's not like he's just taking this one thing, you know. Sure. Yes, I can feel that. Yeah. Hmm. I agree. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. It's legit. I mean, it's really well done. I mean, I think it's also, this kind of reminds you a little bit about the type of production you do and Dramatic Massive does in general, which is kind of making the drawing the line, or not drawing the line, but drawing the connection, you know, between the sort of traditional roots of certain kinds of rhythms and sounds that we like today, and kind of like how they're related to things that came before. Is that something like you? Mhm. 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 Well, it was kind of my introduction as well, because, like I said, it was around when I was in the beginning of high school that, you know, started learning about or hearing hip hop and soul R&B and stuff like that. And I mean, we share a mutual admiration and love for Digital Underground, and like that, like was the, as this sounds ridiculous, but it's the piano solos. And I was like, holy crap, that some you can play piano on this? That's a thing you can do, you know? I think his name was like the moniker was like Piano Man or something like that. And then it was only, yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it's like that that thing of like why no comedies will ever win an Oscar and all that kind of thing. You know what I mean? It's like he had a shtick. It was jokey and it was character based and whatever. So, you know, he didn't get the respect that maybe he deserved, despite being an, like, I was going to say an insane MC, but that almost reduces, you know, what he does, because there's so many things that he does so well. But anyway, it's one of those things. If you choose to go that way, you're kind of not treated as a serious artist, even though he's killing it. Like, the skill level is insane. Hmm. Okay. Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So kind of speaking about all these different influences of yours, you mentioned that you're the son of political refugees from Argentina, and you've lived all over the world. You've lived in Costa Rica, Kenya, Romania, before finally arriving in Montreal. Can you talk a little bit about how those experiences kind of like formed you as a young man, and like kind of discovering hip hop and beatboxing and all this kind of thing? Like where did those discoveries happen? Oh, by the way, Kawe is watching the stream. Hey, Kawe, how you doing? Oh, he says we cannot hear Butta. Oh, damn. Oh, awesome. No. Okay. All right. Oh, I messed up. Anyway, but let's just keep going from there. Unfortunately, I messed up there, but whatever. It should be fixed now, so we should hear him now. Thanks for letting us know, Keller. So go ahead and tell me about your youth.
My youth. Yeah. Well, my parents came escaping the military dictatorship in Argentina. And they had my brother and my sister and my brother, and then me. I was the last child. Was born in North York, Toronto. Kind of in transit. My family the original idea was to go back to Argentina, resettle once the dictatorship fell. But I'm not sure what my parents were thinking, but they were just like, let's wait it out a little bit longer, waited it out, blah, blah, blah. And as time passed, my father was receiving, like, the reason they were political refugees, if you will, they were heavily involved in an agrarian union, fighting for like farmers' rights and stuff like that, which was a big no-no at that time in that country. That work kind of got him props in certain circles, and it was at a time when Canada wanted to be heavily involved in international aid and development. And so the Canadian government offered my father a contract, which he took, and then it became a full-time position working for which no longer exists. It was called the Canadian International Development Agency. And that's why we started getting posted everywhere. So when I left Toronto when I was like one and a half, and I lived in Costa Rica. And then, so those were my first memories are in Costa Rica, and then I came back to Canada and we moved to Ottawa, the cultural center of the world. And I learned how to become an Anglophone. And
so, at what age did you move back to Ottawa, or move to Canada?
Like five and a half, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I learned I wasn't speaking English because I was going to a Costa Rican public school at the time, so I had no English background. And then, but my brother and my sister spoke fairly well because they went to a British school of some kind. I'm not sure exactly, but. Anyways, long story short, they were making fun of me a lot because I couldn't speak English. So I was like, I'm going to become a full Anglo. And so I became a full Anglo very shortly thereafter. And that would be within 2 years of that, I met Bobby Brown,
Right.
So I just kind of submerged myself in North American culture. And the most important thing for me was like just the music that was coming out. I was super into it since I was a very young kid. My mom was a great piano player, played great like tango music and folkloric music. She's an unsung hero of mine, if you will, in that regard. She always brought us like, a level of awareness about certain kinds of music, and also like technique and how to play and shit like that, or how to read music, or at least train your ear a bit. Mm-hmm. And my pops was pure like classical music and blah, blah, blah. But anyways, I've digressed. And then I moved to Kenya, and that's really like I moved when I was 9 years old to Nairobi.
Okay.
And that's like when I'm really starting to like invest in hip hop music. That's like my go-to. I'd heard, let's see, like the tapes I could mention that I had were like I had NWA, Niggas for Life. I had Public Enemy, It Takes a Nation of a Million to Hold Us Back. And also Fear of a Black Planet. I had Cypress Hill's first album. Bunch of just random like little tapes that we could get. Because finding hip hop music in Ottawa was also really challenging at the time. And yeah, it slowly developed into like the language of music that I loved, and I saw myself in a Dougie Fresh and a Slick Rick. I saw myself wanting to be that kind of performer. So by like 9 or 10, I started picking up beatboxing directly because of Dougie Fresh. That's for sure. That's a direct link. Fat Boys as well.
This was when you were in Kenya or when you were in Ottawa?
Like the last year of Ottawa, like so 8 to 9 years old.
Right.
So fully trying to do the Running Man with Bobby Brown, but also like trying to figure out how to make drum sounds with my lips.
Right.
And it was attractive to me because like I'd always wanted to play drums. Like I always wanted to, I was always banging on shit. Like my parents would be like, "Rock, shut up," like that. And then I saw Dougie Fresh doing it with his mouth. I was like, "Oh shit!" And so that's automatic. Yeah, exactly. So no matter what genre, like even if I was listening to like a Kiss record, I would try and like imitate like the bass line with like a kick drum and snare and hi-hat pattern, and try and like and I just it slowly developed, and so I was doing it all the time, and then it became like, wow, I'm actually pretty good at this. By the time I'm like 11. And
so were you like ciphering with friends kind of thing, like providing beats, or were you just like messing around?
No, I mean not in Nairobi. Yeah, because in Nairobi I didn't have any like musical partners. Like I said, like hip hop was still like kind of like a subculture, especially in the international community. It was hard to like, even with American kids, like there was like a lot of American kids that didn't know anything about hip hop. They were coming from like Iowa or Idaho or some shit. Like they were working, their parents worked for the State Department or whatever. So you were like, oh shit, maybe and so you go up to them excited, and they had no idea what you're talking about.
Right.
But what's cool about Kenya is like a cool story is because of the conflict that was going on in Somalia, which is right beside Kenya, there was a large U.S. Marine presence in Nairobi. And so there's a lot of young American Black and Latino military personnel always like walking around Nairobi. And sometimes they would have like Walkmans on and stuff like that. And whenever I'd see anybody with like a Walkman, I'd go up to them and I'd ask them, what tapes do you have? I always had tapes with me, like to see if I want to like trade or whatever. I would make mixtapes and stuff and be like, do you want to trade this for that? And so that became something that I sought out, and I got a couple of tapes out of that. I was into, that's how I was introduced to like the native tongue movement, like Trap Called Quest. The first real native tongues group I knew about was Black Sheep. A Wolves in Sheep's Clothing is the record, and then that led me to like Tribe and Jungle Brothers and a bunch of other, and so that's what I was always like. I was just digging always, and that's the usual history, I think, for a lot of like hip hop heads, is like they get that itch and then they start like trying to make those connections and draw those parallels. I left Kenya when I was 13, so by that time I was like, now I'm fully invested in, I love hip hop.
Right. And
then from there that's when I started to try and, I moved back to Ottawa, and there was like a small group of us that were really into it. It was, you had like your skateboard kid, you had like the skate gang, the hip hop gang, the punk rock gang, the goth gang. You had like, everything was like a subgroup, Whereas now, hip hop is such a global, popular culture. They don't even call it hip hop anymore, right?
What do they call it now? I don't know what.
Well, like any like
I guess it's just
like
music,
like trap or exactly. Like music. Like name one music now in the pop sphere that isn't influenced by hip hop.
That's
like,
right. Yeah, I guess that's what you're saying. Like, yeah, when you hear certain drum patterns and certain things, like, well, that's totally hip hop, but then it's like a pop melody on top of it or whatever.
But before it was like rap crap and like, and a bunch of other shit that I won't get into. But
so I guess you started writing raps at 14, and then I guess it was 4 years later that you won a beatbox competition. Is that correct? On St. Catherine Street, 99?
I didn't win. I got to the finals. I lost to. It was like a tie. The people that won was actually a tie, and there was like was like 4 finalists, and some of those guys actually got together and they formed a beatboxing crew.
Nice.
Like it was Latif, Abra, X-Wham.
Oh, X-Wham was in there back in the day.
I met. Okay. That's the first time I met X-Wham.
Okay.
Latif was called Quadriceptor. That was his beatbox name.
Oh, anyways, yeah. Right? Well, I didn't realize all of you guys are this old.
Then he was part of Beached Whale, and he was connected. That's how I met Tariq. Tariq Khan from
from that. Wow.
New York.
Okay.
Because he was in the same band with Tariq. Like he was like playing tablas and some shit. It was a crazy ass band.
Yeah.
Beached Whale. That was the name of their group. So there was a lot of vibrant things going on in the scene. There was a lot of really cool things going on, and like if you fast forward and jump, I was a closeted MC at 18. Still, no one had heard me rap. I won the competition, and I didn't win. Sorry, I came like final in the finals.
Finalist. You were a finalist.
And they were like, "Hey, what's your name? Like, what's your name? You're really dope." And I was like, Nicolas. It was a terrible beatboxing name.
Right.
And so I went home. I ran home. I was like, "Fuck, I gotta get a new name." And so I was like, and I always liked names with alliteration. I always thought like Bobby Brown.
There you go.
It goes back, and it's a double B, so you can't fuck with it. It's a direct link. I'm looking at Bobby Brown right now. I was like, I literally tried to make my name like Bobby Brown.
Was that conscious or no?
No, I'm just looking at it.
It's just like, oh my god.
No, this was my dude. This was my tape. I'm telling you, I cried, Vincent. I shed many tears when my stereo cassette finally got eaten. Every tape always ends up getting lost to the essence, and I cried. I remember crying. My mom was like, what can I do for you? I was like, there's nothing you can do for me. Bobby Brown is God.
Did you used to like record stuff off the radio and stuff like that back in the day? I had a friend that would do that, but I would get stuff from him.
In Ottawa, it was very difficult to find
anything
black music.
Right. Yeah.
I was like, and I have friends that I've developed over the ages. I guess that we formed a camaraderie based over our adventures in trying to find, like, Ottawa radio was like soft rock. It was like Elton John and Rod Stewart, like, or Lynyrd Skynyrd, like the classic rock, like Led Zeppelin and whatnot, which is cool. They'll have their thing, but you would see something like you would see a video and it would be hard to find. Like you would never hear it on the radio. You have to like run home from school, watch Rhapsody, see if it would come on. We didn't have like vibe, but I only had 2 channels when I was younger, so we didn't have like much music until much later. But you would catch the video at your friend's house, or whatever, and be like, "What's that?" Like, and then you had to go to the music. There was no internet, so you had to go to the music store. I had like a list of names of things that like I was interested in, and they'd be like, "No, I don't have that. No, what's that?"
I don't even know like where I got things from, because I always asked friends. Like my friends had all the music, and I would get copies of it. I guess this is like early pirating or whatever. But
absolutely.
The music that I heard was all on the radio. What's that?
Yeah. But Montreal also has a great historical connection to like independent college radio has always been really strong here, and it's always been rooted in like actual communities that live here. So the hip hop scene in Quebec is profoundly influenced by the Anglophone and Francophone communities, like from the Caribbean, like Haitians, Jamaicans, people of that origin or whatnot, that were coming from neighborhoods like Uptown or Saint Michel, and they usually had like cousins in New York or Little Burgundy or whatever, and they had cousins in New York, or they would go to New York for the summers and come back, or cousins like from other places like Toronto would send like tapes and stuff like that, and that's how you started developing that language. But you couldn't find it. I don't feel like it was the most accessible at the time. Like you really had to search, and if there was like a hip hop radio show on a community college radio station, it was like one out of whatever the 150 other shows that you had.
Yeah.
You would have more country western music in Ottawa when I was growing up than you would have like anything remotely like, bam,
Yeah. I really honestly don't remember how I learned about and heard these music. It must have been, Music Plus and certain things like that, with like one show on one particular day, like a half-hour show. You know what I mean? Like it must have been stuff like that.
Rhapsody used to be an hour.
Yeah,
and then
those kinds of
half hour.
Those kinds of sources.
I think it was like 4:30 or something like that. Or yeah. So if you got home right away from school and you had much music, catch your rap show. It was important. It was really important.
So
it was such a relief.
Well, we got to find sources for the music that we're into. And I just want to mention that Vox actually says that he won that contest back in the day. So you were second, apparently, and Vox was first. I mean, Vox has never told a lie in his life, so that must be true.
Never.
Must be true. Shout out to Vox Sambu.
What's up, Voxy Brown?
Voxy Brown, Bobby Brown, Voxy Brown. Well, look, it's a never-ending connection. Never-ending connection.
That's Pisces. That's what happens when you're a Pisces, man. Stars align. And get your fucking horoscope up.
It's clearly it's a Pisces connection.
So Sagittarius.
Actually, well, you should know. You know my personality very well, so therefore there should be a one-to-one connection between my personality and my astrological sign. But let's talk a little bit about the kind of the early days, because this connects me to how, like, one of the first internet radio stations that I listened to back in the day. This is way before I knew you, but that was WeFunk. And at the very early days, I didn't even know that it was based in Montreal. I was just like, this is awesome. There's great music here. And I checked out all kinds of things. So I'll ask you, see if you can complete this lyric. And even if I was old and gray, I still be...
Even if I was old and gray, I have no idea.
Cooking my filet. That is Butta Beats' freestyle from
1999.
Yeah, something like that. I have it right here. Show number 171 of WeFunk, right over here. Check out the live freestyle and beatbox.
1999 or 2000. It can't be early.
Live freestyle and beatbox by Butta Beats. To hear that amongst many other great lines. I'm not sure if I can play it again for like copyright reasons, but do check that out. And
that is some that's really old. Yeah, I mean, you know how we talked about like how I was saying I was a closet MC.
Yes.
I lived on my first apartment in Montreal was on Colonial Street, in the Plateau. On Colonial and Napoleon, right by the Turkish like gay bathhouse. Side note. And we had those like typical Montreal balcony back doors. Like I was like on the third floor, second floor, and so you'd go into the back balcony, and then your back balcony was connected to another. It was kind of like a weird, ugly kind of courtyard with a little and some like concrete laid on. So I developed a good relationship with these two girls from Winnipeg and one from Toronto, and the one from Toronto was a pianist, a jazz pianist sitting on McGill. Her name's Elizabeth Shepherd.
Oh wow, that was your neighbor.
Yeah.
Okay, I did some of my first jazz gigs with Elizabeth. That's funny.
Yeah, she's mad cool.
Yeah,
and whatever. Like we used to kick it, smoke weed or whatever, and then her boyfriend came from Toronto, and her boyfriend from Toronto is this pretty well Canadian known MC from Toronto named MC Abdominal, and I had heard about him, and he had put out an LP that was really cool, I thought, with this British DJ, and so we just started kicking it, and we saw each other around, and so I would be boxing freestyling. My whole thing about being a closeted rapper was like I would be in like a lot of ciphers and I would hear a lot of really bad rappers, and so that inspired me more to be like, I cannot, if I do start rapping, like I cannot be like those guys. So that was like I was always trying to set a bar above what I would hear, because there was like terrible rappers where I was growing up. But I was like, it's just still, like you learn your chops and you figure things out, and you it's not the ideal situation. You know, it could be better, but you're like, okay, but this is like I'm learning things and like learning how to be better. That's how I learned how to like beatbox for like 10 minutes. You know, and not beatbox for the sake of being like, hey, look at what's like going on in my mouth. Like, look at all these crazy things I can do.
A
like gimmicky shit,
it was just
which
like
I fucking hate. I fucking hate. That's not the point. You know, because like, and that goes to some other conversations I'm sure we're gonna have later. But it's like about respecting the MC and recognizing that that relationship. It's a listening relationship. You know, so like, don't be fucking doing skibbity bops while the guy is trying to say something. You know, because you can't hear what the fuck he's saying, and that's a fundamental lesson that I think I've taken on throughout all my musical history and everything that I've ever done. That's definitely like one of my root principles.
Well, it's like a, you know, rhythm guitar versus lead guitar type of thing. I mean, I guess that's an outmoded concept now, but you know, I think everyone has to know how to lay down a groove and just foundation for other things going on. You know, it's the canvas for the painting.
I want to make a t-shirt called "Stop Fucking Noodling," you know.
That would not be a bad idea. Actually, at Cypher, Chris Lepforest on his snare drum has a piece of tape across it, and it says "You're playing too loud," and I fucking love it. It's exactly what we need, you know. So it's one of those things. So getting back to We Funk early days, I'm gonna keep kind of transitioning. So we were talking about We Funk early days. Shout out
so I met Abs.
DJ
Sorry,
Static. Hold on a second. I'm gonna make a little transition here.
Don't make a transition yet because
we can make the connection. Rock Deep Tuesdays. Which comes out of, or they're both kind of related. Tell me the relationship between Rock Deep Tuesdays and We Funk and all this stuff.
Okay, well, I'm going to finish. I know you want to be like Barbara Walters.
Okay, do your thing. The
abdominal thing, because we kind of like, right. Tangent. Yeah. But so then they put on a house party, and the DJs that were DJing at the house party was Professor Groove and DJ Static. Okay. And that's how I met Static and Professor Groove.
Okay.
And we formed a quick bond. We talked about our shit, and like they had a mic set up, so Abs was rapping, and then I would like beatbox, like so. Then it was like, and then they invited me to the show, right? And so that's how I got my pass to go to We Funk, which I had never heard of. I had had no idea. I was fresh in Montreal, right? And not internet savvy at all. Trust me. So
the party that you went to, was it just a random party, or? It was just a random house party. Okay,
my next door neighbor's house party. There was like 19 of us there. Yeah, and it was these guys just put on this fucking amazing show. I was like, who the fuck are these guys?
Who are these guys? Like,
because I think something that's really stood out for me was they were also interested a lot in like the musical education aspect of the impact of funk music and its relationship to like hip hop. So they would often like, you know, they would play like a Diamond D record, and then they would like transition that into like a Sly and the Family Stone or whatever it is that he had sampled. You know, like so they would they play the original cut to a certain point, and then they would like blend it into like the hip hop version of it. So it like you just got into the habit of like, I want to find out what the fuck are these guys like? What are these guys about? And that's really, you know, and I'm young and you're passionate about it. It's the original rabbit hole. It's the good rabbit hole. It's the positive rabbit hole.
It's showing the lineage. It's showing where things came from and you know where they went to. You know, so many songs that are based off of this one song that has been sampled 400 million times. You know. Kind of thing. All right, so fair enough. Now we do know the connection between you and We Funk. So now, can you give us a little bit of background on Rock Deep? Can you tell us a little bit about this?
I can, but I have to plug in my computer because I'm at 7% suddenly. I don't know how that happens. Fucking Mac laptops, man.
So do you need to go run and get a cable or something, or what's that?
Let me just run and get the cable.
Okay, so I'll talk a little bit while you do that. I'm going to switch it over.
Do you have any elevator music?
No, I'm going to talk. So you go ahead and get that cable. All right. So I discovered We Funk when, like I said, in the early days of checking out this music and early days of internet radio, I mean. And then much later, I ended up playing with Pneumatic and getting to know Butta better. And that's sort of how I got to know him and how he became part of Urban Science. But I didn't realize that there was still this We Funk connection. I didn't realize that Degal, who's the bass player from Pneumatic, was also one of the main organizers of Rock Deep, which is an incredible event that used to happen every Tuesday at Club Saphir. You can see the poster right over here. I'll just up a little bigger. Back in the day, Club Sapphire. And I just remember going there because my friend had said that if we go there, there's like all these crazy B-boys and B-girls that get down. There's breakdancing. It's amazing. And it was fucking amazing. I didn't know anything about what I was seeing at the time. But it became like not a regular spot, but I definitely had been there at least 5 times or something like that. And there's no question that Rock Deep kind of became a little bit of an inspiration for me in terms of the creation of the cipher, because it really was like a multifaceted approach, or it showed hip hop as the culture and not just one piece like music, as all the different components coming together. I think Butta is almost ready. But yeah, Rock Deep was definitely an influential thing. And then going and checking out the Rock Deep website, which is still around, was kind of nuts because I didn't realize how many people I know now came out of Rock Deep, and seeing like Killa Jewel was part of it. All these different people who are still active on the scene. Man. Yeah, so I was just explaining my connection to Rock Deep because I used to go back in the day. Like I didn't know any of you guys.
You would have seen me there.
I'm sure, but I didn't know anybody.
Fail.
Yeah, and I was just saying that it kind of. Whoops, I should put it on the split screen here. And I was just saying that I didn't really know anything about what I was seeing, and basically a friend of mine told me you could see some crazy b-boys and b-girls. They're like, oh yeah, let's go see breakdancing. Like that's what we were going to see. And then it wasn't until years later when I started playing with Pneumatic that I think I saw one of the Rock Deep flyers on the wall and asked about it, and Degal was like, yeah, I'm the one who organized it. I'm like, what? I didn't realize that was the connection. So anyway, I'll pass the baton back to Butta.
Even here when you say it says Rugged and guests on the semi-open mic.
Yes, I am Butta Beats. Let me find it right there. Yeah.
Right
Butta
here in the
Beats.
middle of the stage. And then if you go down, it says drummers, and then it says John.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, where is it? That's not here. But I did see it somewhere.
Where it was, right? But it's just under Butta Beats.
Oh, yeah, here it is. John. Drummers
John. So that's drummer John. This is a really important person in my life.
Okay.
He's actually he would be I would consider him my first drum teacher.
Okay.
Because he was the one who allowed me to play on his traps. He had a basement apartment on Colonial as well, but down like 2 blocks down from where I was. Mm-hmm. And he was part of a group. We all started a group called the Pot Roast Orchestra. That was like pre-Nomadic.
Yes.
Pot Roast Orchestra. And then we were also in this kind of like collaboration with Lowe's and this other guy named Danny Lutz. Because they're both from PEI, so they knew each other growing up, but they're excellent musicians. Like Drummer John was an excellent drummer. Like is Drummer
John still in Montreal or?
No, he's back in PEI. He got into some trouble and went away. I don't know. I shouldn't even say it, but yeah,
right.
He just went away for a while, and I believe he's back in PEI, but like super amazing dude, high quality musician. He played also drums in that band Arc of Infinity. I don't know if you remember it.
Really? Okay. What was John's last name?
I don't know.
Because I've seen Arc of Infinity for sure. That was the double drum group, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was like a skinny, short, lanky, Irish-looking kid. Killer drummer. And he's the one that like he literally got off the drums, and he was like, and there was a DJ in our group, and his name was Fat Sack, and he told Fat Sack, DJ Fat Sack, he told him, play this breakbeat, and then he played the breakbeat. He's like, he just turned to me, and he's like, play it like that, and so like my first that was my automatic I was like, oh, okay, like the beatboxing, the breakbeat on the record, drums. Like, how do I move my arm the same way that what I'm doing with my lips or whatever, right? And and that just became like, that was my hangout spot for like, I hung out hard with those dudes for like 2 years straight, pretty nomadic. Like that's 2000, 2001, 2002, 2003.
So,
and we started doing loft parties and like all these illegal shows, you know, like, which was a big thing in Montreal. I'm sure you remember, like,
yeah,
like St-Laurent is very different than what it used to be.
Do you remember Acupuncture? August 10th?
There it is, Pot Roast
645 Wellington with the Pot Roast Orchestra.
Yeah, and that's like, and what's funny too is like, it's also like, it's like a funk thing, but it's also like, there was like a lot of anarchists and it was a weird scene, man. But yeah, I do remember that. That was a balling ass show. $5. Everything was a $5 show.
That's the way it was. It's funny that, I mean, these scenes continue to exist in various forms and you know, mutate and whatever. But you know, we're both old now, so we don't get invited to all of these house parties anymore. But you know.
I guess not, right? Yeah, they did that new thing. There's a new party where they text you the address like an hour before the party starts or whatever.
Right.
I don't remember what it's called. Anyways, yeah.
That kind
like
of
an Afrobeat party. Yeah, but it's dope. I mean, that's what we were doing.
Oh, you're talking about like moonshine and stuff like that?
Yeah, moonshine. That's
right.
That's the one, yeah. That's a hype concept, but I'm like, that's also like exactly what people were doing.
Absolutely, yeah.
All like, whether you were into raves or whether you were into like funk or house, you can find anything really. You can find any like how many times did you walk into like a loft party where there was like 3 people in a huge loft with a massive sound system and then everybody else was like wasted on some kind of fucking weird drug, like some ketamine or some fucked up shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
That's how I remember. That's definitely my youth. Like walking into places and being like, what the fuck? And like drum and bass, like some crazy ass drum and bass.
Yeah. That was the you know, early to mid 90s. You know, that was the sound.
With the kids that were the pacifiers.
Oh Jesus Christ! Yeah, that was the thing.
And the
well, that was more
pants.
the rave scene, I guess. Didn't necessarily drum and bass scene, but you know, I guess there was an overlap between the two.
They love that. Yeah, they both.
But it's interesting. Like, I didn't realize how similar, because I didn't discover the Rock Deep Tuesdays website until I was researching for this interview, and I didn't realize how kind of similar it is to the Cypher in terms of. Shall we say philosophical goals, in the sense of like getting together the hip hop community, like really providing a space for a bunch of like-minded people, you know?
Well, you and DeGal are both the same astrological sign, so
what sign is he?
He's not the same sign as you. He's a Leo.
But let's just say let's just not at all.
Are you born in December?
Not at all.
August?
Well, you'll eventually get it. You get. I tell you what. Just to be on the fair side,
February,
I'll give you
March.
12 guesses.
Awesome. But when are you born? November?
Well, you should know from my astrological sign. Actually, I gave you the answer earlier because I told you that the first time we met was a day before my 35th birthday. So I actually gave you...
May?
Well, that was Intimate
Was it
Skies.
May?
So, yes, it was May. Yeah. So I'm a Taurus.
May what? Oh, you're a Taurus. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
That's it. After like 12 guesses. Oh yeah, that makes sense. I'm
not good at arguing at the values of astrology, but you should fucking check it
out. So yeah, these were kind of like the early days of Montreal hip hop, funk, soul scene, dance scene as well.
Yeah. Well, DeGal was deeply connected in that. He also, just a side note, while Rock Deep was happening, he had also started this thing called the Students for the Advancement of Hip Hop Culture, the Concordia. It was like a Concordia student group, and he like finessed a huge chunk of change to do this hip hop symposium.
Okay,
and Rock Deep, like the creation of Rock Deep, the same time Rock Deep was happening, that's what gave him credibility in the scene. DeGal, and also being a co-founder and you know who else is in that group? Was the photo of her. Community, spoken word poet.
Catalyst?
Female. Catalyst, yeah. She was also in that. She was going to school at the same time.
In Rock Deep or in...
No, in Students for the Advancement of Hip-Hop.
Okay.
So, and that's where I think she got like a lot of her organizational skills. Like that's where people started developing how to organize.
Right.
Because by the time that this was happening, this is like kind of the deterioration of like the aesthetic of and the moral compass of the golden age of hip hop, you know, early 2000s, like the super jiggy era, you know, and the hyper commercialization of the culture without all these other elements that we had been like students of and we were really, you know, deeply invested in and we wanted to make a stand about. And that's what kind of all linked us. And what's cool about Degal is that he also was able to bring both francophone and like super anglophone and super francophone people that normally otherwise wouldn't congregate together as far as the scene goes. Like, you know, you really had two separate linguistic scenes. Not a lot of people from the anglophone side, whether they're from like Little Burgundy or NDG or Cotonou or the West Island, didn't know much about what was going on in Hochelaga or the Plateau or Rosemont. Like, and that was like a really important factor, you know. It's a real change in the landscape, the cultural landscape of Montreal as far as like rap music.
Well, it's funny how to this day it's still an issue, like in all sectors of Montreal or Quebec. But you know, the language thing, whatever.
I think it's because it's a default. I think it's because like a default thing that we have, like, and there's people older us that have generational hangups about that time, and so that the information is passed in a certain way. So old habits die hard in that regard, you know. Like, and the thing is, I never really understood it that deep. I was like, I understand, but I'm also like, you're the colony that lost, you know.
Well,
so I don't have crazy empathy for you, you know. Like I feel your pain, but at the bottom end, it shouldn't stop you from, you know, learning about other things and learning about other people and blah blah. I was very hippie about it when I was younger, and I was just like, fuck it. And I speak French, I speak English, and I speak Spanish. So I was like, I was one of those I fancied myself a multilingualist, and I thought that, you know, people should take advantage of that in the city. And there wasn't a lot going on in the scene that was multilingual, if you will. You know, other than like Franglish, I guess you could call like a multilingual thing.
But I mean,
you know what I mean? Like distinctly Anglo, like don't hang out with French people and don't hang out with English people, and like meeting and congregating in the same spot and breaking bread. It was a big deal. And Rock Deep was, I feel like, instead of that.
I think it's one thing to be like talking about things that are either events or people that are like multilingual, and other thing to talk about, and I don't mean this in terms of ethnicities, but I just mean multicultural in the sense of going beyond just the language difference, you know, and really getting to know where somebody's coming from and all this. And that's what you're saying with Rock Deep. It's like or I think that's what you're saying, that it goes a little bit beyond just language and people uniting,
just
over
sharing a space, like because there was a lot of tension behind it, and you know, and I lived in Ottawa during the referendum, and that shit was violent. Like,
yeah, it was bad.
You know, friends of mine like got stabbed over like being an Anglo. You know, we went to Hull, or which is now Gatineau, which is where all the bars were. Like, you could get in with fake ID. There was always fights every time you cross that Portage Bridge. Like, you'd always catch some beef, some drama about language, and we're like, fucking John, who the fuck is René Levesque? Like, watch out for the dudes in blue and white. That's all you knew.
It was definitely. So I was in Montreal at the time of the referendum. 93 was it, or I forget what it was, but it was pretty messed up. I mean, there was a lot of, you know, I had friends that got randomly accosted in the street by, you know, I mean, most of my friends at the time were Anglophones, so it was mostly Francophones that were accosting them. But it was like not like everywhere, like you came out of a metro and people would be handing you flyers and pushing for this, and you got to do this vote and da. Like, man, it was really very divisive. You know, it really. Well, it reminds me of the current situation in the U.S. In terms of creating really two sides that are completely uninterested in looking at what the other side is all about, you know.
Yeah, but I mean, the huge gap in the cultural industries here too. About
Wally said it's 95
about
the referendum.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, you were saying?
I'm saying that it goes to show, like, that's how you understand. Like, if you understand that, then you should be able to see, like, why the cultural gap and divide in representation in cultural industries here in Quebec. Like, simple things like the 375 anniversary, like that scandal where they're like, Montreal. And it's just like, where the fuck are the Haitian people in this video montage?
Yeah.
What Montreal do you live in? Where? Show me where there's not an Algerian. You know what I mean? Fuck. Get it together. And it has to do with that whole, like, identity crisis, and I just don't fucking vibe with it anymore. I think it's chopped up to nothing, and I think, you know, in some regards, people always use that term, like, the oppressors become, the oppressed become the oppressors, or use, like, the same. I feel like they've not done justice or changed anything in terms of the landscape of how that could better, you know, how we could really deeply connect and really be like a true nation. If you really want to talk about a nation, you have to include, like, all the immigrants. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I mean, I think a big part of it is just that it's so much, it's easy to see faults in other people and hard to see faults in ourselves. So you can find, you know, you can say that somebody is stingy and not realize that you yourself are being stingy, you know. So in this kind of case, it's like you can say,
is that a Chinese comment?
It's totally a Chinese thing. Absolutely. I can't tell when I'm being stingy because it's just a default behavior.
Exactly. I like this guy. I don't know why.
I would never. Money. What, you pay the price in the store? What, are you crazy? You know. But no, for real, it is difficult, and I think that's kind of like the source of it. It's like we can't see our own the box that we ourselves are in. You know, we can't see that. We can see the box that other people are in, but not the boxes that we ourselves are in. So yeah, so I mean, speaking of like kind of multiculturalism and all this kind of thing, can you talk a little bit about meeting Lou and the beginning of Nomadic and how that, because, like, you know, Nomadic is in many ways like the perfect emblem of Montreal multiculturalism. Oh, Butta's going off screen for a second here. I'm not quite sure what's happening. I guess I'll take over for a little bit while Butta deals with some stuff. I should mention that Butta's a father of two, and there may be some things that he's got to deal with. Oh, hold on. Let me put this right on the stream right now. That's what he's dealing with right now. So there are some emergencies that need to be taken care of at home. That he is being diligent.
I'm good.
There we go. All right. So yeah, tell me a little bit about the beginnings of Nomadic.
Well, Rock Deep is a central part of Nomadic. That's where a lot of us met or would hang out, you know, or meet up with. So shout out to DJ Static. He was a big part of Rock Deep. He was the regular DJ there. Degal, and through that connection, they were both also involved in that Concordia Students for the Advancement of Hip Hop Culture. Mm-hmm. And that symposium is also important because that's how I met Lou.
Okay.
That's how I met Vox. Like, we all met in that, we all were interested in this, like, conference because, like, he put on this kind of, like, just, you know, like, very early, you know, kind of like a great vision that we all shared about hip hop, internationalism, because we all come from, like, different backgrounds, and we also celebrated, like, a multicultural perspective when it comes to talking about hip hop, like, not from the atypical, like, American viewpoint, you know. What is a Canadian experience? And then you break up the word Canadian, you have, like, you know, there's, like, Aboriginal hip hop, there's or Indigenous, I should say, first generation Canadians, like, how they, you know, feel, like, whether it's from the Latin community or from the Afro-Caribbean community, what you will, you know. There's all kinds of different manifestations of how that came about, and it's not always the easiest to discover, especially not at that time. Like, we didn't have any kind of platform. A lot of, you know, there wasn't a lot of, like, people in the rap scene in Montreal. Like, the whole idea was, like, get good, like, cypher, get your bar game up, get your beats, and shop, like, go to Toronto or go to New York.
Right.
That was the whole strategy. especially for the Anglophone rappers that really felt at a disadvantage when it comes to the industry. Like you wouldn't get couldn't get a commercial radio play. There was no actual like record labels that were putting out.
You speak about this like it's all in the past.
Yeah, but it still is a problem, and a lot of that has to do again with like who has all who holds all the keys to the doors. You know, the proverbial glass ceiling. It's a difficult thing to talk about, I understand, but it's a real factor that impacts, I feel, the scene negatively in a lot of ways. Like, you know, in the same way that like when you guys were fighting this whole St-Laurent, like the way people were trying to close down these venues.
Oh, the venues,
like,
yeah.
It's like, it's such a shot in the fucking nuts, you know, like what like, why would you move to St-Laurent and complain about a bar? Like, you're crazy. You're out of your mind.
Yeah. It's also one of the things that I'm kind of afraid of with the results of the pandemic, in the sense that accelerating gentrification, you know, the only things that will survive are the people with the big coffers, you know. So we'll see how that all turns out. On the other hand, I feel like in terms of the arts will always survive, because if you have a voice, and there's no stopping that voice from coming out. Yeah. Now there may be lack of funding and there may be all kinds of other problems, but there will be no stopping the voice from coming out.
No, well, then that's kind of the story of Nomadic. Like, we kind of just like,
right.
We were all from a scene. We all had our feet in both the Anglophone and the Francophone hip hop scene through one way or the other. And Lou, El Capitan, was very instrumental in, obviously, in the creation of Nomadic, because he was the common bond that we all had. So some people we knew or kind of knew, like, but we were boys, you know. It was an all boy band before. That was our original plan, was to be like the Backstreet Boys,
right? The Backstreet Boys of Quebec rap.
Yeah, exactly. And he kind of pulled all his resources together, and he was like he put on a show called I believe it was called Hold Up Mentor. I don't want to get it wrong, because so there was one show that he puts on. He produced the show. It wasn't very successful, but it was a very cool. He wanted to make a platform for local Montrealists that were like multilingual. Because Lou always had the multilingual vision, because early on as an MC, like he wrote in both French and English. Like, his first language is French. That's what he mastered. He was in love with French hip hop, but he also has a relationship with English hip hop.
You know, I should point something out. Oh, we got a guest on the stream. Oh, look at this guy or girl.
That's a girl, yeah.
Although we shouldn't be gendering, but but hello. Hey, it's a microphone. It's a So how many languages does she speak?
She's got 4, maybe.
Oh my lord! But that's what I was going to say. Something real quick about like when you're referring to multilingualism in Nomadic. I don't think if everyone realizes what we're talking about is minimum trilingual with everyone in the band. Yeah. Like, I don't think there's anyone who knows less than 3 languages. It might be even a minimum quadrilingual. I'm not sure what the minminimum.
No, where the minimum is trilingual.
Is trilingual, yeah. Like, everyone in Nomadic is at least.
You can't be a Nomadic if you don't speak. Exactly. You know? Vince, what were you doing there?
I don't know. It's a big mistake. No, I can't. I really can't. In fact, there's a funny story about that. I won't say who, but somebody contacted me and said that they're doing a record, and at the beginning of the record, they want a bunch of people to say a phrase in a certain language, or they just want everybody to say a phrase, you know? So I said, okay, yeah, sure. I'll come in and record the phrase. And so I show up, and they're like, so do you speak Mandarin or Cantonese? I'm like, you got the wrong guy. And then they're, of course, super apologetic. They were like,
I'm so sorry. Shit.
I should have just made it up.
Sure.
No, I should have been like, okay, I got it, guys. Ching chang chong. Ching chang. Chong. Just gone full in. Anyway, but yeah, so I just wanted to give that clarification of Nomadic in terms of the multilingualism that you're talking about.
So in the that involves these main languages. The principal ones are obviously English, French, and Spanish. Those are the ones that are constantly bouncing around. And then you have the Creole interjects as well, and Maghrebi Arabic. So yeah, it's just always like a hoopla, and that's also something that I feel really is really representative of Montreal youth culture. Outside of the plateau. A lot of people are like, oh, I love Montreal, but they don't really know the boroughs that well. They stay within the the McGill ghetto, and they don't really get out. They don't really explore, so they don't really know the real, authentic cultural landscape of Montreal. And that's what I feel like. That's what boggles my mind when 16 people in a boardroom decision can come up with the 375th anniversary and then not include.
I mean, yeah.
It's really... How many meetings did they have? They had meetings. They had a secretary, a treasurer, a fucking disaster. Yeah. And so that kind of lack of awareness is something that we definitely have to continue to fucking dismantle the shit out of here.
I agree. Yeah, I mean, it's funny that you mentioned that the McGill ghetto kind of situation. I went to McGill and I grew up in NDG, and when I started coming down to downtown on a regular basis, to go to school or whatever, I was just like,
it's a very strange,
yeah.
I mean, it's kids from Toronto. It's Toronto, kids from upstate New York, Vermont.
Yeah. Basically, I was like, where are all the black people, or where are all the Asians, or where Russians? Where are the Russians? And nobody. It was just all white people. I mean, I guess you could say what Russians are white or whatever, but you know what I mean. There was no cultural diversity.
They're not really.
I know, but I'm just whatever. I'm just playing the benefit.
Anybody that can wear a tracksuit that well.
That's funny. That was exactly the vision in my head. And
with a wife beater under and a lot of gold chains. Eastern Europeans are exempt.
We're gonna get in trouble for this live stream. I don't know.
I lived in Romania, so I have a
right. You get the right to say stuff about Eastern Europeans. But no, it's true. It's this. People come you have kids from Toronto that come to McGill or whatever, and they're like, oh, Montreal is amazing, and it's like you have no idea what Montreal is. You know what downtown is. You haven't even barely been into the plateau. It's
the mountain tam tams and
it's
the typical student experience and the bar hopping and whatnot. Yeah. But also when I was going to school at Concordia, mind you, the plateau still had a lot of really great things going. Rock Deep was on St-Laurent between Pine and Prince Island, which now doesn't look at anything at all like what it used to look like.
Yeah.
And you had Blizzards and Blue Dog and Tokyo. All huge contributors to what the hip hop scene would become like. I met the majority of the people that I met and that I still continue to work with. I met in those early days through those circuits. Right. So can't knock it either at the same time. And you just had to move all the university students out of the way from time to time. Even if you were one, you were looking for an authentic, connection and stuff. But some people are there just to drink and fuck, get their degree that their parents want them to have, and then they go back home, get a job at a law firm.
I think it's a lot of. I had this discussion with kind of a couple of younger members of Urban Science, is that I don't think a lot of people remember or were around to know that there was a time not long ago when St-Laurent didn't have a single chain restaurant or chain bar or whatever, right? Now there's Subway and Ben Provence,
Jewish mom and pop stores, clothing stores. Remember the old Portuguese ladies?
Yeah,
with,
of course.
The ankles like this. And there was a lot of heroin as well in Montreal at that time.
Mm-hmm. Still is, but yeah.
You could have, but there was definitely, that was a flashpoint, and there was you could not have a bike
Yeah,
locked
still
up
you
outside
can't,
without getting stolen.
Yeah. But I mean, it's just crazy how, like, you know, if you think of, I don't know, like a butcher shop or something like that, I think we're down to like 2 or something on St-Laurent. Like there's almost none left, you know, whereas there used to be like 5 to choose from, or you know what I mean, and all locally run. I'm not talking about Provigo or something. Yeah, you know,
like
so
the
it's like
Hungarians and the Polish, the Jewish sector. Then you had the Portuguese sector of the same strip. Every like cultural hub had their own sector.
Yeah,
you know?
or even like in terms of bars, in terms of like venues, of course, but also just in terms of dive bars. Like I guess Biff Tech is still around, but like,
is Barfly still around?
Oh yeah, Barfly's still around. So Biff Tech and Barfly would be the only 2 that are still around, you know. But like, well, Sapphire. What was that place? I want to say not Malibu, Miami. You know, and places like that.
Legend. That is a dive, man.
You know, and none of those places exist anymore. I mean, actually, speaking of places that don't exist anymore, I'll pull this up on the live stream. Hold on, let me find it right here. You know, this was a legendary venue. Yeah,
it was.
Which was
which is now what, Club 221? I don't know.
Apartment 200. Apartment 200. Yeah.
Club 223 569.
But tell us a little bit about swimming.
Swimming is, well, it was like a pool hall, really.
Yeah. Did you ever perform there?
I did, yeah. You know DJ Logic?
I think so. Or
he was like a pretty famous like beat maker.
Yeah. Okay,
DJ from the '90s.
Yeah.
Anyways, he had.
I wasn't sure if you meant. Yeah. Anyway, go ahead.
Wait, but we never even. You know that we completely like digressed from the beginnings of Nomadic and everything.
Well, we can. Yeah, sure. Do you want to keep going, or
let me? I'll swing it back.
Okay, you'll swing it back.
This is an interesting connection because so the swimming was a spot, apartment 200 on St-Laurent, and a pretty cool, like they always had a lot of really cool live shows, a lot of like American acts in the college circuit, I think, like would hit there. Anyway, I got to perform in front of like rap and beatbox when they had they threw an open mic at the swimming for a DJ Logic show. And the reason I was able to do that was because what's her name? It was like Pam. So girls from this is B-Girl crew that was also super tight with Rock Deep, because what Rugged MC or De Gal's girlfriend at the time was part of that crew. They're called Solid State.
Oh yeah, I saw them at the Fringe like in the 90s or 2000s or something.
Yeah.
And
one of the girls in that crew was a girl named Pam from Victoria, and another girl named Kay. What was her B? Anyways, whatever. Special K, I think, was her B girl name. And they eventually gravitated towards like creating a collective, and they opened up a thing called The Nest, which was right behind the swimming.
Okay.
And it was a loft. It was like an art loft, but it was like more focused on like dance performance.
Okay.
They financed it. They did some grants and some personal. They invested their own money and whatnot, and it was quite a successful venue for a while. And just in front of the Nest and right beside the swimming was DJ Static's loft, where Nomadic first met to develop a set to go to Cuba.
Wait, was this above the swimming? The apartment right above?
No, he's in the building right next to the swimming.
Okay. Because there was an apartment right above that became like legendary. But anyway.
No. I know what you're talking about, but no, it's not. He had like the loft buildings right beside the building where the swimming is.
Sure.
And it was called the Corridor. I don't know if you remember.
Oh yeah. Like there was that Jamaican spot in there too.
Yeah, exactly. So on like the second floor, on the corner, and if you walked onto the thing, you could look over the balcony. It's like fire escape, and you were looking at the Nest. But the Nest, I hadn't been there yet, and they had just opened up the doors. We went to Cuba and did the festival. We kind of formed as a group because we all went as you know, we went as a solo acts, and we merged into one set just to be like a representation of Montreal hip hop at this big festival in Havana, Cuba. And when we came back, we had developed like a mixtape, and we started getting a lot of positive feedback, and we put on a show there at the Nest, and that was like one of their first shows, I think. And we it was like packed, like you could feel like, you know, one of those famous loft parties. Like this one that I'm going to remember. Like I was like, wow, like this is bigger than what we thought.
Right.
You know, that's when I realized, and I think that's when everybody in the group. So that's me, Vox, Lou, Degal, Ali. We all realized at Static, we were like, "Whoa, this is jumping! Like, we can do something with this." Mm-hmm. And we had developed like some cool routines because we were with each other for so long in Cuba, and then when we came back, we had kind of like we just basically reperformed the show that we had done,
right?
Done there, and people received it well. We sold out the mixtapes, we reprinted them out, we sold them out again, so we knew that there was something that like, and it was all about the hand to mouth. Like we were very visible in the community as well, so it was an easy F. We felt like it was just the right place at the right time and the right sound, because people were looking for an alternative to like the jiggy shit, but also wanted to identify with the multilingual stuff, because a lot of people, like we said, you know, Montreal's really like it vibes with multilinguals. Like, you know, everybody is like a bilingual or a trilingual person. So
yeah,
but it's never represented in music. Right. So we were trailblazers in that regard. But also shout out to Mazayan for putting
Wally says he was there at the Nest. You forgot me.
Oh, I forgot Wally. My bad. Shit. And I just saw him today. And this is the mic. He let me the mic to use it. All my shit's in boxes and storage downstairs. Because I have 2 babies and there's no room for it anymore. Yeah. And I remember Wally at the Nest got super trashed. Like it was crazy. And now I'm just fucking no. But he was one of the people that actually pointed out like, yo, this shit is like real. And he was also a very successful promoter in his own right. He used to do these Afro funk parties. He did the fundraiser. He helped with the fundraiser of one of these parties that he did, like to get us, because we all invested our own money. We paid for our own plane tickets to go to Cuba. We just believed in it that much. We're like, I quit my job for sure. I don't even know what the job was that I quit. I just quit it. And I modeled my life around that. I was like, I'll have these jobs and I'll do these little hustles on the side, but my main focus is music. Mm-hmm. And Nomadic kind of like affirmed that it was actually a viable thing.
Right.
That could take me places. It could allow me to travel. That's something that I had already in me from traveling so much. Like I needed to go places. I had this international vision. I experienced hip hop in so many different places too, right? Like in Romania in 1997, like the graffiti scene was like a guy painting, not even painting with a spray paint can, like just with a brush, like writing Tupac
right
on the wall. Like that was like hip hop graffiti in Bucharest in 1997. Yeah. And you're like, but they also had those people that were coming from the diaspora after the dictatorship. They were coming back. They were bringing tapes, and they had a radio show in Bucharest, dude. That had like, there's a guy, I can't remember his name. He's a DJ, but he was the first DJ of the first like gangster rap group from Romania, which is kind of like the NWA of Romania, called BUG Mafia. Okay. And he had a radio show. He grew up he left Romania when he was a kid, like 5 years old, and his family moved to New York, and his family lived in the Bronx.
Okay.
And then he had all of these like drops from like Fat Joe, Big L.
Wow.
Okay. And it was playing on Romanian radio.
That's crazy.
And I would listen to it in this little communist car with this he was half Nigerian, half Romanian basketball player that I met, and we vibed because of our love for hip hop. And so he used to drive around in the Dacia, which is the state car, which they still made.
Tunes,
And like the whole car would shake. It was like it's like you're driving in a tuna can, basically.
Yeah.
Don't say. Yeah. You feel the road a lot when you're driving those.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. Like, he was just to go back to what Wally pointed out. I was like, yo, we can really do something. And he really I remember him like seeing him speak about it, and I was like, I believe what he's saying, and that kind of like it was like the last thing I needed to hear. I was like, I felt it, but I wasn't sure if everybody was in it. And at some point, we all were just like, fuck it, let's do it. And so we started building shows and started throwing our own parties and stuff like that. And slowly but surely, we knew that we had to like diversify our show, introduce some new elements. Degal's dad.
So who was in the first, like, what was the first lineup? And then, like, how did it evolve from there? The original lineup was what exactly?
Well, it was a collective, so we were in a group.
Okay, so sometimes things were, people would come in and out.
Yeah, well, no, it was, I mean, we're a collective, like a loose collective, but we were, it was just like, because the group was really only formed in order to be able to do this one big show in Cuba. That actually never happened in the end.
Right.
The whole kind of smaller side. Yeah, the hurricane.
Story.
Yeah. The long one. And you can watch the YouTube video about it. Yeah, watch a video with Lou explaining it. But what was I saying?
Original lineup.
It was Lou, Vox, Wally as like principal MCs, and then
back then
I was
you
beatboxing.
Okay. Oh, you were beatboxing. Okay.
Yeah, like Degal was rapping, but he didn't have a lot of verses. He wasn't really like the standout MC, but he also liked beatboxing as well. So we would do like routines where it was like him beatboxing, me beatboxing, Ali Sepu playing guitar. So that's like the first introduction of the live element.
Right.
And we had Static on the cut. So Static would like juggle break beats, play and then between that, then we'd have like an instrumental, either our own or sometimes he would play like some classic instrumentals, and we would rap over like just verses. Just kind of like a classic like hip hop show, with a DJ and MC crowd response back and forth type stuff. And then we felt like we could add more. And Wally played guitar a little bit there, and Degal had a bass that his dad owned. I don't know if his dad was a bass player, but he had a bass. And he was like, "Yeah, I want to play," and I was beatboxing. So then he brought up that like our first couple of practices, we were like, every once in a while, people just started introducing new things to it and seeing like how we could really shape this vision into a concise kind of like sound. So there was a lot of learning. There was a huge learning curve for all of us because we were all coming from different angles and maybe also had different influences. And so we had to kind of come to some kind of compromise. But the final like nail in the coffin was we were like walking down Cotoneige Boulevard and just passing like just by Park Kent, which is now called Martin Luther King, I think.
I didn't know they renamed
those.
it.
Yeah, they renamed it. Yeah.
Okay.
Who wants Park Kent? It's gross. Who's Kent? Who is that guy? We don't. There's like Confinement de jour, those like pawn shops or whatever.
Yeah.
That chain, and there was like a drum kit in the window, and I was just like, we kind of like stopped. We had this tradition of practicing our routines in Lou and Vox's apartment, which was the apartment above No Bad Sound Studio, which it wasn't No Bad Sound Studio yet, but it would become that. Because Vox worked for the Maison de Jeunes de la Cotoneige. Anyway, so that's a side story.
That's a whole other story too.
We walked by the spot, and by the time the studio was open, we're like, "Oh, be cool." The guy was like, "I want to play bass," and I was like really passionate about drums. So every time I'd see a drum, I would try and play it. And I didn't have my own. I didn't know what I was doing. But we walked by that pawn shop, and it was right there in the window. And I was like, "Damn, gosh." Let's go see what's up. And so we all went in. And Vox, I believe, was the one who finessed. He was like,
of course,
Vox price of like, it was like $1,200 or something like that.
Yeah,
it was like a Yamaha classic, like the DP series, like the student kit, which I still have. It's my only drum kit I've ever had. It's a funny story.
Yeah,
and he got it down to like $700, but cash only, so that it wouldn't go on the books. And then I was like, fuck it. And I booked it. Like I went to the bank, I ran up Van Horn.
Yeah, yeah.
To Catherine, I sprinted. Like by the time I came back, and it was the beginning of like the summer, which is like it was a wet summer. So by the time I was obviously soaked, and I put my money where my mouth is, and we just grabbed the pieces, and we walked it down to what would be like NBS studio. It's kind of like our rehearsal spot. It was just at the beginnings of it. Like we were just doing workshops and stuff like that with kids, but it wasn't a fully fledged like put out idea. And shit, man, I didn't even know how to like assemble the drum kit.
Right.
And I just kind of like winged it, and I like pretended that I knew what I was doing to some regard. And then we just got on the kit and started working it.
Yeah.
And we caught a vibe, obviously, and we for our like for the lack of the musicality, we had like a lot of heart, and we had a lot of like we were just bringing something different, like a sound that was different, and we were really the only live hip hop band, Before it was like on Vogue stuff. Like, yeah, this is 2005. Our only reference for that was The Roots.
Right.
That was the only band. That was the only hip hop band we had ever heard of.
Yeah.
With credibility, like we wanted to be recognized as we were so hip hop, but because of the way people perceived us, slowly but surely we became kind of like we fit into the world music
right
genre.
But, I mean, was that always a component? Like musically, was that a component in the early days, or no? It was really like American hip hop type of style.
I think it's just because people don't know how to like. They don't understand that context. So like, okay, I understand. Like, this is a guy from New York, and he's rapping about New York,
right?
And it's that box.
Right.
Check.
Yeah.
Whereas guys rapping in different languages and drawing samples from music that's not the traditional sample base, like what we were really interested in also like digging into records that reflected kind of like our cultural heritage as well. So that was a huge component that stood us apart from other people. And and I guess the rest is history. But that's really the beginning of it, like slowly but surely doing mad shows. Like we did mad shows for free. We were just trying to build our skills. Like we were like, I think we were kind of obsessed. We were doing like 5-6 shows a month.
Okay. Yeah. So a show a week or two.
No pay, like
right.
Or like $20.
Yeah. Pass the hat and like split amongst 4 different bands and all that kind of
Who
stuff.
knows? Yeah, and we did every kind of show you can imagine, like from the illegal loft party to the family picnic.
That's it. Yeah. Well, that's how you get started. You get out there and you do everything.
Look, we don't have a budget. We have $100.
Yeah. Were there some other venues that have also disappeared? Because we kind of got started with this whole swimming thing and whatever that you guys played at. That
the big ones. I mean, the big one for us, the huge one, is Bobards. That's for sure.
Yeah.
That's just like for us. It was we just got super lucky with Bobards. It was the right place, the right time. They were really trying to like get that place hot as well, so they were willing to try out new things, and they gambled on us, and we had just really incredibly successful turnouts to those concerts. Like we were doing monthlies there, and it was like packed it was just packed, man. Like sweaty walls, like that kind of vibe, and that's how we really learned how to like fine tune all of our songs. Like we wrote songs for concerts, but we didn't have a record out. And then when we did our first record, it was just the compilation of all the songs that we worked on to do shows.
That is actually the best way to do it, right? It's like you've worked the songs out in the real world and really like pounded the shit out of them, as opposed to like creating something in studio and you don't know if it's going to work live, and you know what I mean? Like, it's this.
Well, I have an argument. You can have an argument for both. I think.
That's true. Yeah. But it's there's this
for us as like a loose we didn't have like a singular guiding factor. We just kind of like absorbed as much as we could. We were really I feel like we were really experimenting a lot early on, and and some of us felt like we really wanted to have like a hip hop sound no matter what, and we couldn't understand why people didn't consider us hip hop. That was like a frustrating, as far as like our first introductions with the industry and how people were billing us. That has a lot to do as well with the cultural history of Quebec and like what they're willing to, how they describe people that are different or of Ayel, you know, like Bachenu, right, et cetera, et cetera. So
you feel it was like the multicultural aspect of the band that put you in a different category.
It allowed us to create our own fan base. Like we created our own fan base. We just created our own lane. We had to, you know, because there was no real. We had to advocate for ourselves, and luckily we had, you know, and the strength in numbers really helped as well, and we were very committed, you know, when we were younger, in getting that kind of like putting that work in, because we just love performing, and we realized that all of us together performing, like people really they fucking loved it.
Right.
They loved it.
I mean, knowing what you know now about how. Well, I guess I have two questions. One is, knowing what you know now about how the industry in Quebec works, would you have done something different back then? And then the other question is, like, if Nomadic had started today, how would things be different, or would things be the same?
Well, it would be like a trappy pop.
Well, sure. But I'm saying, would you still
would be different?
Would you still be stuck in like, okay, they're a world music group and they're, you know, kind of thing?
Well, I think that's just like no matter what time frame, like I think they would still do that. I think they would still fumble in terms of that. You know, the predominantly white francophone powers that be, if you will, in what's considered the music industry here in Quebec, is dominated by certain preconceptions and certain prejudices, obviously, but there's also success stories behind that as well. There's also people that have trailblazed. Would we have
and
done
at the end of the day, maybe Nomadic has been successful.
Yeah. Like, and on top of like, I'm having like a reflective moment where I was like, wow, like, 'cause I had another interview with somebody about my work as an educator. And Nomadic kind of comes in place and all that, because it's part of the culture of Nomadic. A lot of us are also, you know, deeply involved in community work, and we really feel strongly about social, you know, issues pertaining to social justice and blah, you know, et cetera, et cetera. But it became like it became a label that we didn't reject, but we weren't exclusively. But like people like tend to just like label you. Like one thing we could have done better is really tried to focus on like marketing and how we wanted to market,
defining your label and defining
our sound. Like we maybe could have worked harder on that, but I don't even see how that would have been possible. You know, we just kind of were really exploring and going through the motions, and we were green in a lot of ways, and you know, like, but we achieved a lot in the third, fourth year of Nomadic. It was like, okay, like, and that's when we got put on. We got to go to the Jazz Fest, that outdoor show, and it was like, you know, like 3,500, 4,000 people, something like that, like, and they were all like loving it, and we did like 3 encores, and we just knew that we could travel with music, and that was I think a lot of us had that in common as well. We were all heavy into traveling. We all loved like checking out new shit.
hence the band name.
Right. Yeah, that's why it fit. Yeah.
So, well, I mean, we could. I'm just trying to decide whether we should move on from this topic or kind of go in a different direction.
That's cool.
But you know, why don't we go a slightly different direction? Because you mentioned like a lot of people in Nomadic and yourself are doing a lot of community work, a lot of workshops, a lot of work with youth. Can you tell me a little bit about Project Word and the stuff that you do with youth and workshops that you put on? I'm putting on a little picture here of the new project. Well, not new anymore, but the Project Word recording booths in James Lang, which are fucking amazing. I gotta say, when I saw this, I'm sure when everybody saw this, they're like, "Oh my god, this is super cool." So tell us a little bit about this.
Well, I mean the origin story, like, and we also have to mention like Miriam and Tally. That's like another. They came in a little bit later.
To that.
They came in a little later as far as the original lineup.
Yeah.
And they have an interesting segue. Like Miriam was a youth in Cotonej that had an incredible talent that was recognized by Vox, and he brought her kind of to a practice of ours for, I think, Intimate Sky.
Wow. So one of the first times was that. Okay.
No, before. No, it would have been before. But it would have been like 2008. 2006. She was like 18, like just turned 18. Because I was like young. I was the youngest before Miriam.
Really?
And I'm almost,
Oh, right. Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah. You're like 3 or 4 years younger, right?
Yeah, I'm the baby brother of the. Everybody else was born in the 70s. I was born in the 80s.
Right.
Suckers. And they had an interesting segue, and but we could talk about that. But the community work, like the people that have really, really invested, I would say a lot in community work would be me, Lou, Vox, Tally, and Wally. Mm-hmm. And we all chose our different strength. Like me and Lou really focused on creating studio spaces for free access, and also encouraging, like being proactive about being like a peer adult role model to youth that are interested kind of in the same things and that you have some kind of knowledge about, and you should get involved. That was our common bond that we had. Vox eventually became the director of the Maison de Jeunes. He kind of PR'd a lot. It was a community center that was in a lot of trouble as far as in the city, and as far as how the community perceived them. Like, we were labeled as like a gang recruitment place and all this kind of stuff. So some pretty heavy shit going on, and we were able to kind of just finesse this small studio space on Descoutures Avenue in the original Maison de Jeunes before the city gave them this building in Kent Park.
Right.
And so we cleaned it up. We repainted it. They had a stage for when they used to do their neighborhood jams and whatnot. So we just kind of refurbished everything, brought in some artwork, and everybody brought in like a piece of some hardware. Like I think Lou brought his tower. I brought a screen.
Right.
Then we bought a sound card, like an $80, like the cheapest sound card ever, just to have like this, just to start the process,
Yeah, the basic elements.
And then we started realizing that there was actually kind of like a big demand in it. Like we didn't think, there was a set group of kids that we knew that were really invested in hip hop, and that wanted to argue about hip hop and talk about hip hop and rap, and they wanted to make beats, and they wanted, so the first 3 years of like No Bad Sound, starting in like early 2003, when we were all starting to talk about like how we need it to happen, and then it was executed by like there's the building. So, and that way didn't look like that when we first started, right? It's like
you didn't just buy it like that.
Move in like that. Like that. Yeah, exactly. But this is a cool picture. Keep the picture up because that's a really cool picture. So here at the bottom doors where you see the speakers, that's the entryway into it. And so that was the original Maison de Jeunes Cotonej, and they had a 7.5 apartment up here.
Up there.
And so this is like when I say we went down to the studio, this is the doors that we went through, and in that space is where I put my drums together for the first time, Nomadic. And Lou and Vox lived see this upstairs balcony.
Right.
Yeah.
They lived on the balcony?
They lived on the balcony. They lived in that apartment. It was Vox, Lou, and Vox's girlfriend, Warda, or who's now wife. They were a little happy couple. And they have a long story that goes back to Winnipeg, which is a whole other crazy story. And yeah, we started developing the programming and trying to figure out how to like engage kids in just like making sure that their skill level is at an adequate level at where we think that they should be. Like, yeah, they say they want to rap, but they can't like hold this shit down. Like they don't know how to hold a mic, or they don't know how to do so. we started seeing like there was a need for someone to kind of have that mentorship role, but not be like an authoritarian figure either.
Right.
And it was,
but teach some technical basics, you know.
Yeah, and it was cool because it was separate. It was like, this is on Décolleté, and then the Maison des Jeunes had place within the Chalet Kent and Kent Park.
Right.
So this is like, you know, it's about a 10-minute walk up Côte de Neige and going to the park, right? So we kind of became this own little enclave, and so we started attracting all the creatives from the neighborhood and from other neighborhoods. Started growing an appeal.
Yeah.
But we struggled a lot, honestly, with a lot of financing. Like, it was bad. Like, I mean, I was making minimum wage, and my first checks from the Maison des Jeunes, it was like I was making like $8.50 an hour, and I had to split 21 hours with another intervenant at the time.
Wow. And
then, so what happened was, and at the same time, we were like doing a lot of outreach, and there's a local high school not too far away from there, about 2 blocks from here, called Lavoie High School, and a lot of the kids that were getting kicked out, that were coming to the Maison des Jeunes Côte de Neige, that were hanging out in the park after dark and were getting into trouble and whatnot, but also who are into rap and that we were attracting, really like just started coming through. And so we became like this new hang spot, and it gave us some weight in the neighborhood in a lot of ways that I think other community centers didn't have, you know, because we were specifically speaking to giving kids an outlet of expression, you know, and we had all these tools. We knew all about the history, so we wanted to share that knowledge, and just kids were like sponges, and they absorbed it. Not obviously, you know, there was also some gangster kids that were like, nah, fuck that community stuff, and why can't I say fucking bitch?
Right.
You know, and what's cool too is like, even if there's kids that went through that program and were acting like that, there was still a group of, you know, older men calling them out on shit.
Right.
Which is how, like, that's how I learned my...
Well, it was still a youth center. It was still a place for, you know, yeah.
But in the best ways, like, because you had like, we were a youth center, we were supposed to be 11 to 18, but honestly, we had like up to 24 there. Mm-hmm. Because in that kind of community work, like, when you have like a 16-year-old that wants to hang out with like all the bad boys, a lot of those guys are like in their 20s already. You know, that's something that you see a lot in this line of work, and you have to do your best to find who the leaders are that are like homegrown in that community, and use them as your allies, and some of them works really well. Like, they hang out, and then they teach kids how not to be bait, how not to like act out, to show respect for the place, show respect for the venue, because we put a lot on the line as far as like building that, where it was being built, and the kind of trust and confidence we had in the process. And, you know, obviously, like, multiple generations afterwards, like I left and Lou took over, and it took another level, and then Lou left, and Johnny Tai Lotus would eventually take over, and Ad was there actually in between. Dr. Bad, who was like a student of Lou Pienza, you know, in the high school of Vendée, and that's his politics and whatnot coincide with Lou's, and it made sense for him to like, yo, come check this like studio. You can make beats, and you can help kids like have knowledge about the shit that we love. Like, we want to make sure that people know what the fuck they're talking about and what they represent before waving that flag. Because it's annoying, you know, when you see people that are really like have no idea.
Yeah, well, it's kind of coming back to that cultural appropriation thing in this sense, like just knowing, doing your homework, learning the history, doing your homework, learning the influences.
Ignorance,
you know?
is easy, yeah. The ignorance thing is like that. I mean, that's the common link. I think that all those labels have it. A lot of it has to do with just real, like, some sheer blind ignorance about shit, like choosing and making choices to not see things that are blazingly obvious. But whatever.
Like I don't mind if you're just like a fan and you're listening to music. I don't care that you don't know anything. That's fine.
Yeah.
But if you're going to be a creator, if you're going to be an artist, if you're going to be a voice for it, you got to know where it's coming from. You got to know something. Yeah. You don't have to be a freaking PhD in hip hop history or something like that, but you got to know something.
Yeah.
So anyway,
and it became this place, No Bad Sound. Really, like it became. I mean, there's like now we're talking. It's going to reach its 15-year anniversary soon.
Wow. Okay.
Right. So it's like it's only like 2 years behind Nomadic.
Right.
We did our 15. Yeah, exactly. And that's something that I'm personally very proud of about the work that I put in, and even after I was no longer working at the Maison de Jeunes Côte-Neige, and I started doing outreach work specifically in high schools and the Commission Scolaire de Montréal and the English Montreal School Board.
Mm-hmm.
And like doing workshops, like these one-off workshops. That's when I started developing like that part of my hustle, and seeing that there needed to be a bridge. Like I wanted to direct traffic from the talent that I found in schools or through these situations, or networking with teachers that loved hip hop, because it was few and far in between. Like at that time, it was like a lot of I did this one thing where they have these PED days, like they had pedagogical days for teachers. Sure. And I did one of them run by the fine arts pedagogical consultant, who was a friend of mine I went to university with. And she put me on. So I did this like speech, and I just did kind of like a talk on hip hop and the value and merit of its education, like where you can slide in, like to not know anything about this culture, you're doing a disservice to yourself as a teacher, because you're gonna make some wild mistakes and you're gonna say some wild shit. That's like, I kind of was like raising a flag, like you guys really gotta like commit to learning more about this culture and really try and understand it, so that you can help shape the young minds that are actively involved in it, without coming off as rap crap and it's not real music and that kind of shit, which is the general attitude that I would get in schools, especially with music teachers that were more interested in teaching band, but teaching band and schools where kids just want to rap. Like, let's put the clarinet down, right? Let's just put it down for a second, and let's like try and rethink of like what a music class could look like,
right?
And then pick up the clarinet and then reintroduce it in that way, right. Let's just, because musical education was also like all the music programs were getting closed in Montreal because of all the budget cuts. So there was a huge deficit, and I feel like it was like a great way to fill that void. And so we started, honestly, we were getting kids like coming from like St-Laurent, Saint Michel, like Hochelaga, coming all the way uptown,
right?
To record a song about their girlfriend. Jean-Marie, je t'aime parce que t'es tellement belle. And we're like, okay, so let's back it up. Now what you want to do is, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And to be honest, that also honed, definitely for me, I'll speak for myself, but it honed my production skills, my workflow. Because when you work with when you become a teaching artist, like you have to have those like man in the mirror moments where you gotta check like what is it that I'm actually doing, and how can I explain it in a very ideally in a literal way, so that the maximum amount of people can understand it.
You're forced to one thing just getting things to work, just getting it to work. But it's another thing to actually be like, okay, what are the steps to achieve this result, or something that you're not even familiar with, right? Like,
and how can I take those steps and make them sound more exciting than they are? Because I know this kid, the minute I put 2 steps in front of him, he's gonna fuck off. And I know that he's gonna fall in the crack that I don't want him to fall in the crack. Because part of that too is, it's not like you're trying to save the children, but it's like, that there's real consequences to them not showing up. There's real consequences that they're facing and they're dealing with in the very moment that you're just like kind of hanging out and talking about music.
Mm-hmm.
And your responsibility as a youth worker is to like obviously have barriers between you. Like you're not responsible for them. You're not their legal guardian, but you have to be 110%, 115% with those kids every time they show up. You gotta be like the best version of you every single time. Because I've been in those situations where I was like at 80% and kids recognized, and then I didn't see them ever again. You know?
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. I'm kind of curious. You were talking a little bit about having to have a very clear sense of how to explain something and all this. I'm curious because, I think from what you've told me, at least, most of your influences are more from older school hip hop. Well, that's what you grew up with, right?
Yeah.
And definitely like one thing that I find very notable about the newer nomadic albums is that you have gone in like a trap type of production direction. I'm talking just beat wise, obviously. And I'm curious whether, like, was that something that you kind of were forced to learn about by working with kids, or was it a sound that you were into already? Or because I know also as a rapper, it's not your favorite type of beat for yourself, but that could be different from being a producer.
Yeah, well, that's the curse of being a person who has like wears a lot of hats. Like your learning curve. You're kind of late in a lot of things. It's really annoying. Like I hate myself for it, but I can't help but be curious about all these different ways that I like to express my artistic creativity. So like,
sure,
I get lost in tangents. And so if for example, if I was wearing a producer hat all the time and I wanted to be like, I want to be known for a sound, like that's how I understand. That's how I see producers become successful. They really craft and shape their own sound and stand out. And then everybody copies them for like 2-3 years, and then then some shit changes, right? Some other star appears out of the woodwork,
right?
But I definitely had to hear a lot of music I didn't like,
Sure.
And I had to also recognize that like this is a youth culture. This is generated. That's what it is. Like,
right.
I'm not a fan of like Little John or I had to like listen to it, and I had to force myself to figure out ways that I could teach this thing that I wanted to do, like to make sure that the musical tools I want to impart, that at least would remain. We can still find it in the most simple and basic. The rules are all the same, like they all apply. So it's tough for me to say like there's a poor connection, I believe.
Yeah, there's some issue. I can hear you, but it's breaking up quite a bit. Basically, I heard you say that you were forced to. Can you still hear me, Butta?
Yeah, I can. I see you now.
It's just I think your Wi-Fi is kind of like. Whoa. Okay, yeah, we got you back. I just heard you say something about forced to listen to some music that you didn't like.
Why is it my Wi-Fi? Why is it not your Wi-Fi?
It could have been. It could have been me. I don't know. Well, I'm not using Wi-Fi.
For your Wi-Fi,
I'm plugged in. So, but sorry, you were saying. Keep going from where you left off.
Oh, you're plugged in. Yeah, that's right. I can't really argue with you. Do you have an Ethernet cable? Is that what you're saying?
I do have an Ethernet cable. Yes, I do. But I heard you say that you were forced to listen to music that you didn't like, and then you said like, I don't listen to Lil Jon or whatever,
Not forced. I mean, not forced, but like it comes with the like you're there for them. It's not about
absolutely.
It's not about your ego and like. I was never interested in being like the old guy that was like fuck your music, like because I went through that and I didn't like it at all. And I've always been lucky to have a little bit of foresight as far as like my teaching philosophy or my methodology. It's not. It's really just being like empathetic and understanding and aware of different learning styles, and like I can teach the same things that I want to teach. Like I want to make sure that they have this, like, because the foundations are always the same. I feel like in any genre of music that you really want to like stand out in, like especially when it comes to like digital music production and songwriting and performance.
Mm-hmm.
You can teach the same workshop to a rapper that you could teach to a country western singer if you really put your mind to it. You know what I mean?
It's true.
As far as like just in songwriting, and songwriting was the big one because it was the biggest challenge because everybody wanted to be a rapper. Not everybody could rap. Not everybody had a sense of rhythm. How do you teach a kid how to rap when he has no sense of rhythm?
That's the most. So I mean,
yo, shows up, is like has the heart.
Mm-hmm.
You know? Mm-hmm. So you can't turn them down. Like it's in our mandate to accept them, and so you learn a lot about like how many different ways can I explain how to come on the one.
Right.
You know. Right. You try color cards, you try counting like numbers, assigning numbers.
Have you found something that worked? Like, have you found certain things that kind of helped?
There's all those things I mentioned. Like I said, because all different types of learners, and
right.
The more experience you get, you're easy. It's easier to identify the different learning types and where you need to focus on. Like, okay, I see where this guy's hang up. His hang up's not on his vocabulary, like, or his writing. It's more his sense of rhythm. Like he's crunching too many syllables into one bar, and he doesn't understand that like you need to work on a grid as much as you want to like flow in between everything and show like how like crazy talented your flow is. You gotta land here and you gotta land here. Where does the beat, like where does the kick and where does the snare go? Is the kick on the 1 and 3? What's the 1 and 3? Okay, well look, on the grid when you're making a beat, like when you see your boy making a beat, he's planning it on these things. This is what a bar is. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's what they mean when they say bars. Like you gotta try and draw all these different things for them to have a great understanding of what they're getting into. And then naturally the curiosity, if they're really interested in it, like they really want to be down, they'll do the work.
Right.
And then there's other kids that are kind of like wayward. They're like, they have some kind of talent, or they're really talented, but they don't show up.
Right.
You know, and then so
it's
talent
have all these plus work. Talent plus work. It's not just one. You know.
Right. So you see all the different what if scenarios, and that can be challenging. That can be actually like heartbreaking sometimes, actually, because you see some kids that are like crazy potential, and you're like, fuck, like, don't rob that guy.
It's really you see the same thing in instrumental, like saxophone students or whatever, you know, like people who have natural ability, like natural sound, natural sense of time, you know, all this kind of great musicality, and then you give them a bunch of stuff to work on, they come back the next week and they haven't worked on it at all. Like, well, man, you have so much potential. I'm not asking a lot, you know. But you know, it's funny because I've also had obviously I've had students with serious rhythm issues, and that's like the thing that, I mean, I never tell this to the student, but it's like almost insurmountable to a certain degree barrier, you know. Like I literally had a student where I sat across the table from them and I just did this, and I said, just clap along with me, and they couldn't do it. They couldn't do it in time. So I'm like, well, how do we even begin? Like, you know, where do you go from there? Anyway, it's a tricky thing, but the point is not to turn anybody away. It's just finding other ways for them to enjoy music and to express themselves. And
yeah, and honestly, some kids that were never like destined to be rappers or whatever,
sure,
got interested in like the other aspects of things that we were like, you know, coiling the cables and like plugging in the monitors, and and then they became the stage tech, or they found interest in the graphic design for like an album cover or whatever, like just being in a positive space where kids is like just kind of like, you know, figure shit out for themselves, but through the creative arts, you know. And that's the real cornerstone of the work we did. And if you want to jump to James Ling, that was done all through initially through a grant that was received by Project Word, which is originally a project called Literacy Through Hip Hop. So it was really more focused on songwriting, song creation to help literacy. And me and Lou came in and we kind of put in our NBS, like we took all the experience from working at No Bad Sound and we started with a laptop, a mic, and we were like in some random room with like the furnace going off, and we did all of our first works with kids that way. And we showed the school that there was an interest and that kids that normally aren't interested in anything were coming to our program. And then they started financing our shit, and we started developing partnerships with different funding organizations. That's part of the work that you got to do in the community. Like, you really got to figure out how to finance stuff all the time. Luckily we got through, like, McGill put in the McGill Education Department, run by this a doctor named Dr. Bramo. She's always been a big fan of Nomadic and the work we do. She became a board member of the Maison de Jeunes de la Côte-de-Neige. So she's always been intimately connected with No Bad Sound as well, and she liked the work that we were doing, and so she proposed to use our work as a justification for an ask for $250,000. This is a grant called the Shirk Grant, which is like a societies and humanities grant, usually for academics. And they wanted to propose a project where they kind of did this like urban arts school programming or school curriculum. So there was a lot of co-teacherships and things like that. So me and Lou were developing. The idea initially was to develop curriculum that
we just
taught in different
we just lost
ways.
you. Could you say that again? You said the idea was to develop, and then we lost you.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
I can hear you. Go for it. Yeah.
Okay. The idea was to develop a co-teachership, which involved like a rewriting of the curriculum, but that didn't take away from what was needed or the requirement needed by the ministry for a kid to pass a certain grade. Like it's this thing called the QEP. It's called the Quebec Education Program. So that's like, you get these pamphlets and you say like, oh, they need to show these competencies. Like, how can I show this competency? Like, this kid can't, like, he can't write his name, but he can like recite a Kendrick Lamar verse.
Right.
How can we use the arts, and how can we use hip hop, and how can we use writing to help them see that there's a relationship between the two? Like, if you use this to your advantage in order to build this is what you want to be, but you can use this to get there. I also emphasize the importance of acknowledging the impact and the value of hip hop culture throughout the school. So the administration had to be involved. They weren't always. Obviously, it's a struggle uphill. The teachers union, teachers that are mediocre and not really like, they're just there for the paycheck, which is a common thing, you know. So we had to try and like really break down a lot of things, and there were some good experiences, but also some really negative ones that really kind of soured our relationship. But we were lucky to be able to finesse the $15,000 it took for us to be able to do that. So those are from RCA Victor Studios that were bought by Bordeaux Prison. And then they bought them, like Bordeaux Prison sold them or whatever. And we had a guy who was a connect who grabbed them, and we plotted them out, and we built it from scratch. It was crazy as shit. They're heavy, man. Like heavy.
Yeah, sure.
It's like sample, because it's like for lawyers to talk with their clients. That's why I think Bordeaux had it or something like that.
Oh, wow.
Not sure why they had samples. Something like that. Like there was some kind of like, it wasn't clear. I was like, really? This came from Bordeaux?
Yeah.
And then he was like, originally from RCA Studio Victor.
Wow.
So they're like 40. I think they're like 40 years old or something like that. But they're really solid. And we developed another relationship with another funding organization. They helped finance like the actual purchase of the Mac computer.
Right.
we bought several microphones. We just like for different applications. We also got to buy we got like a Fender bass guitar and a guitar, and got good amps. And the success of our program also encouraged the English Montreal School Board to open a music program at that school. Nice. So the success of what we did brought back a music program that hadn't existed, I think, in like 30 years, and that's high school. So,
right. Well, I mean, those are the programs that are being had everywhere, yeah.
But then they're still teaching it more. They're still teaching more in the traditional, like,
sure.
Although,
yeah.
And that's something that I still think is like a hang up. Like, they still don't have enough people that are born and raised in hip hop culture that love it, that are super committed to breaking down those barriers.
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with, I'm not going to say quite laziness, but like if you are...
It's not practical. It's not a practical...
Well, that's it. Like if you went to, I don't know, music school, like you studied music in high school, let's say you're from Montreal. You went to study music in high school, you went to Cégep, I don't know, Vanier or something like that. Yeah. And then you go to some university to study music or music education. You're coming through a line of like, this is the way music is taught. Whereas at, for example, the high school level, really you just want people to enjoy music and enjoy playing music. And it doesn't matter whether they know their solfege and how to read even necessarily. Like, with violin, a lot of people are learning by the Suzuki method, which is a hearing based method, instead of learning about all the, not that they don't know that, but it's less important, and I just feel like if somebody, I mean, they could have formal training, but if somebody was teaching music and also like a huge hip hop fan, for example, man, they could get those kids to play that stuff easily. Yeah. And you
see,
you go.
You see those videos.
Yeah, you see those videos. That's the thing. That's what I'm getting at.
They tap into what that kid. Yeah. They tap into what the kids are into, and the kids play the shit out of the music.
They play the shit out of it.
That's a success story.
Yeah,
and maybe 3/4 of those kids are never going to pick up an instrument after high school. Fine, but there's going to be like 5, 6 of those that are going to be fucking. That's like gems. Like that's
still doing it. And it's. I think at that level, it's really about. I can't find the word I'm looking for. It's about cultivating just an interest and a joy from playing music or from listening to music. I think that's more than anything. And it's like, who cares if they know how to like read rhythms or whatever? Like, who cares?
Yeah, exactly. Like the end goal is not to make these like hardcore sessions like this.
Yeah, like, they're gonna go study in university and do a bachelor's degree.
We wanted them to be able to make certain connections between the value of learning new things, and it also like helped deal with a lot of like self-esteem issues. When you talk on the mic about yourself, and you're like, a lot of 13-year-olds are going to talk about like Lambos and
well, that's what they hear. That's what they hear.
Yeah, exactly. So then I'm like, well, and we don't scrutinize it because it's like it's valuable to hear because they're like showing themselves. It's the first interaction, right? They show the mask, right. And then there's all the vulnerability, like all the different layers that you got to work through, like to get to the real vulnerability, Mm-hmm. And that's when you really know the kid, and that's also when I think they really respect you, like at the most, because you honor that, and you don't forsake it either. Like you don't take it for granted, and you show that in the way that you engage with them. Like we don't talk down to kids, like. We cracked jokes with them, like it was like all just like boys, like, or and girls as well, like just like cracking jokes, like in the same way like a nomadic tour band, like it's just like that's
exactly
basically how we try to model our, like everybody gets a say. People can talk shit, but you got to back it up and blah blah blah. And people are challenged, and we need a space for that. And kids that that are stuck in the system one way or another are definitely in need of that more and more.
I agree completely. I didn't even know. I wasn't thinking about how to transition from that, but I agree with all of that.
Transitions.
Well, you know what? Actually, how about talking about in terms of music education and all that, you talked a little bit about kind of learning how to play the drums, buying the drum kit, and then just, you know, kind of figuring it out. And then also with Pot Roast Orchestra with John on drums and all that. Can you talk a little bit more about how, and I know you have some technical things to talk about in terms of drums and translating like hip hop beats into beats made like on some kind of machine, and translating that to a live kit.
Yeah. Well, I think the last one it's important to talk about because it's pertinent to like what we were trying to achieve at Urban Science, something that I've always been super like gung-ho about since the beginning, like about respecting the genre, you know, and really trying to like decode some of like the myths. I think a lot of like how you had mentioned that there's a lot of people that go through the educational system come from a more traditional background, whether it be jazz or they went and had a drum teacher, but like all they learned was like top 40 or rock.
Right.
There's a problem when you have a fixed notion of what rhythm is if you're approaching like hip hop, because like all the drums from like at the beginning of what we would call like hip hop production, like say if you call like Marley Marl like taking a snare from one record and putting it on another record, like that for me, like the layering of drums, that's like the original like sample based production that really defined what hip hop sound is. Everything else was just like taking notes from all the things that were already happening in the industry, like in New Jack Swing, or you had drum machines and people playing on top of drum machines, but it wasn't like, you know, I mean, it wasn't fine tuned in the way that if you think about how people chop samples now and how drum loops are reworked and refixed and edited, and you have to learn how to translate that in a way that, I mean, I can't imagine how people could read that on a note. Like you could write down a pattern, right? But it's like in the same way that people have argued a lot about like the way that people teach jazz, like, and they'll just write on the top like Duke Ellington swing or something like that. Like, is that a
yeah, there's certain
because
kinds of stylistic things.
There's people that read and are super cerebral about music, and then there's people that they feel, you know, and the music has to have a healthy dosage of feel with all the insights and intellectual things that happen with that kind of like high level expertise, like when people really hone their craft. But it has to come from feel at the beginning. Like
I agree. Yeah.
You can't come from an intellectual. You can't try and intellectualize that kind of feeling. So you have to learn. You have to make an emotional relationship with music that you love, and especially so if you walk into a cipher and it's like a hip hop cipher and you're like, I'm a drummer. Yeah, sure, I know how to drum, but then you're like just like showing like you're riffing the whole time. You're not really respecting the code.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, that's also knowing the role, you know. I think we've both talked about this to a certain degree in terms of drummers coming up at Cypher who say they know how to play hip hop, and they clearly don't, you know. Like one of the things you're talking about is how like the origins of a lot of these rhythmic innovations in hip hop are from the fact that it's sample based. And like, for example, I think the whole like swing thing in hip hop, like it just started as a mistake. You know, you had two, like in the sense of you had two samples that didn't exactly line up. Yeah, they didn't exactly line up, and it's like, oh, but that's cool, and I like the way there's
you're not wrong, and there's actually an interesting, you know, Bob Power. You know who that is?
I know the name.
He's a famous mix engineer. Famous engineer. He did all the Tribe, like all the J Dilla shit. Yeah. J Dilla was super tight, and there's funny anecdotes like when you look up like his history and his relationship with hip hop. Like he's the more like, you know, he's this like lanky like skinny white dude from like, you know, like long hair and he is like he's like so important in hip hop sound. because he was able to translate. Like he was the right fit for the genius of like a JD or a Q-Tip coming in and being like, I want to run this through thing, and it needs to sound like, you need to make it like it needs to be warmer. The cake needs to be warmer or whatever.
And he could translate that, you know.
And he somehow like he knew without compromising the pocket or without compromising the rawness of it. And there's anecdotes about like people running shit through samples or drum machines but not knowing how to like truncate or not knowing how to like keep it clean, so that it's got this like overlap. So every say if it's a 4-bar loop, every 4 bars it just everything just keeps on sliding, but everything on top of it that you're playing on top of it just keeps on sliding off of rhythm. And even like D'Angelo was terrible with drum machines. This is a funny interview that I saw with Questlove talking about how he got a groove out of a mistake. Yeah.
Well, I mean, Questlove is famous for like learning how to play these like drunken beats or whatever you want to call them, you know, those kinds of things. And
there's a guy named, I don't know if you know this guy, Daru Jones.
I know the name again.
He's a session drummer guy, but he's even reworked his drum kit. He's like physically manipulated his drum kit to better play like hip hop swing. Like his snare is like down. I don't know if you can.
I'm gonna put up an image in a second.
And he's great. He talks a lot about. He talks like for drummers that are listening in, right? Like,
I clearly have never seen him play. Oh, you know, because that's kind of like a marching band style, like where it's lower. I wonder if that's part of the.
And reason. You can drag, and he drags. You'll see, because he's like the drummer for Pete Rock, the mega producer. He has a band called the Soul Brothers, Soul Survivors, and so it's like him DJing with like a live band,
right?
And this guy is fucking pocket like bananas, and the way he swings, like you can just hear like he like incorporates the digital or analog hiccup.
Right.
You can see it. Like his whole body is shit. Like he's killer, and his choice of hi-hat sounds, his choice of cymbals, the way he decides to put in rolls and stuff like that. It's all knocked out at 4/4. Like you got to be super tight. Like throw in all your glitter and glam if you want, but you got to do it in the right spot, you know. And you also have to learn, you know, like the power of the silences as well in hip hop beats is really huge. To emphasize, you're trying the whole mandate is to emphasize what the fuck the guy's rapping about.
Yeah.
You like check out my triplets, check out my paradiddles.
Yeah. I think that's you know, that's one of those things that a lot of instrumentalists have difficulty with, because they're coming at hip hop from the point of view of having learned, you know, an instrument. I don't mean that the turntables or whatever not an instrument, but I'm saying like the way a producer approaches using the drums is completely different from the way a drummer approaches using the drums, you know. And so if you're a drummer, you have to think more like a producer, and you have to be like, oh, I don't have to do a roll into a hit. I can just stop playing and then play the hit, and that's can be very impactful. In fact, more impactful. You know,
I just pull out on that for that.
That's it.
That half a bar, and then come back in on the crash. You know, like come back or play on the downbeat, or like all these little things that you start picking up. But the first part of it is you have to learn how to just play in the pocket and just stay with it. Like, don't get distracted. Yeah. No matter how pretty the girl is that's looking at you, like, wow, you're such a great girl. Don't start riffing on the hi-hat.
Right.
Take it easy on the tom-toms.
So, you know, we're talking a lot about instrumentalists, but do you have any advice for some of the MCs and stuff like that come up at the Cypher?
Same thing. Like, there's fundamentals that you have to know. Like, if you don't know how to count 16 bars, you're in a tough spot when you come to a place like the Cypher, because you're not really aware of like where you can fit in, you know? There's a lot of like on the spot timing that you got to be aware of, like, because you got to be listening to like whatever's going on rhythmically to catch whatever it is like you want to rap on, but then you also have to figure out what's going on melodically, and you have to know where it fits. Like when do the saxophones come in? How long is the phrasing? You have to know. Okay, it's like, and people that are naturally gifted in the art, they feel it and they know automatically. Like, and you can see it when people have that innate ability, and then you can see when people are rapping on the third bar of the bridge section before the verse section comes back in, and you're like, fuck.
Yeah.
Fuck, dude, yo, you train wrecked that whole shit. And it's like it's so beautiful. Like, and that's the worst part about it is it's amplified because you're on a microphone. You know, like, and you're spilling beer like on you as you rap. Like that's the other thing, you know. It's a classic shit, you know.
Yeah. Counting bars, that's not, you know.
Yeah, counting bars. I would say that's the fundamental, and learning how, if you're an instrumentalist, no matter what instrument you play, like learn how to try being creative in like 2-bar phrases, like create your own loops, and then learn how to do variations on even numbers, whether it be the 4th bar at the end of the 4th bar or the 8th bar. Like that's the traditional, like, normal hip hop. Like, this is what hip hop is.
Mm-hmm.
And once you really get a solid, like, understanding of that, you really commit to that, then I feel like you've earned the stripes to like explore all the other shit. But if you explore, like, if you like, you're like, oh no, that's too easy or whatever, and you go all over the place, like, you're missing like some fundamental basic driving points for like why hip hop is so enticing. Like, why is their head is their head snapping like that? Like, you gotta learn how to just like stay there. Like, don't fucking.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. You cannot groove by playing something different every bar. That is not possible. Like,
it is not.
There has to be groove is repetition. That is groove.
That's like Bach or something like that. Like, let me show you like 19 chords.
Yeah,
set,
19 variations, and it keeps expanding, and that's beautiful. That can be great.
It is beautiful.
But if you want it to groove, if you want that head bop, if you want people to move, if you want to cause a physical reaction in people, play the same thing for 5 minutes. You know what I mean? And
you don't see people in the church organ being like, oh,
that's it.
The Bach church organs or whatever.
I thought you were talking about like a gospel church, and then you could definitely be doing that. That's a different thing.
But here's another thing that's an important. I'm happy you brought up gospel. And then you have, on the other spectrum, you have people that have already an innate incredible feel as far as like staying in time and whatnot, but that come from a culture of like overplaying.
Yeah.
Right? And that's the other thing, is like, oh, I can immediately relate. I grew up listening to rap. I know what it is.
Yeah.
But never really making the distinction, like never really taking the time to be like, hey, really, what's fucking going on with these drums? Like, how can I get? And from my generation, obviously, like how you say, like the golden era, like a lot of it was like dirt and texture and off kilter delays of the swing. So how can you do that with the physical drum set? Still have the same feel, but without losing also the pocket, because sometimes people get lost in like the details and then forget about the fundamental rhythm.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But I mean, the gospel thing, it's like, to me, it's like no different than like the jazz guy who comes into the hip hop jam and the gospel guy who comes into the hip hop jam. They both are trying to apply, or can't get out of their jazz knowledge or gospel knowledge, and can't adapt to what's actually going on, you know? And it's like, well, that's cool. That works in that style. That's awesome. But we're not playing that style right now. It's just like if you had the most badass, I don't know, country western musician comes in and they fucking kill it on those tunes, and then they sound terrible in a hip hop situation. You know, it's just
that's what's tricky. This was tricky because people that are attracted to, again, like I said, like hip hop is now really like a world cultural phenomenon. It no longer, so people, they like rap music, like, like I know it, or like, you know, but they also listen to like Arcade Fire, or there's like a mishmash. So, you know, you don't really know what the influences are when people come on the stage and think that they can rap. But usually you can tell within the first bar of delivery, right?
Absolutely.
Like,
or the pre-delivery. Yo, 1 2. that lasts
Yeah, but that's also
longer
normal,
than the
like,
rap. Sorry, that's one of my pet
sometimes
peeves. That's one of my pet peeves.
but that's more like they don't have. It doesn't mean that they're
Yeah, I know.
not good rappers.
I
Is
know.
that they have a zero performance experience.
Yeah. In fairness,
Like most people are closeted rappers, you know, like
right.
people rap about was in the basement while people are like playing PlayStation 4 and smoking weed, and you're just rapping with your boys. Like,
Right.
that's cool as like a lived experience, and you know that you want to do that. But that's different than putting on a show.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can learn a lot from other genres, and as far as like how you got to put on a show, like how you got to be an entertainer.
Right. Like, in fairness, I think what you're talking about a little bit is like the fact that you can be not interacting with anyone and put out some even great sounding studio recordings, you know, in terms of rap and whatever, and work out every last thing. But doing it in a live situation is a completely different beast. And especially at Cypher, it's like, who knows what BPM we're going to be playing, what kind of beat we're going to be playing that you're going to try to rap over. You know, it's
Exactly.
a different situation.
Like, people feel the vibe, and then they get caught, and then they get caught up in what verse they're trying to spit.
Right.
Ideally, you work a lot on your freestyle as well, which is an important thing. Even if you're bad at it, like, you still should do it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's like it just keeps like certain muscles working.
Mm-hmm.
So like when you're on the spot, like the music, the beat is sending you like a message. You feel the feel, and then you know that right away, like, oh, this verse is perfect for it. If it's a rhythm, and if it's a freestyle, you at least know where to come in and kind of just flow through it.
Right.
But people freestyle sometimes, and they keep on freestyling. They don't know how long they've been freestyling for either. But that's another problem.
Yeah, that's another problem. Yeah. And I think that's kind of like the, you know, informal ciphering, like, you know, old school ciphering in a circle type of thing, mindset taken into this live I mean, yes, what we're doing is a jam, but it's also kind of a performance, right? I mean, there's people there who paid money to come in and whatever, right? So you can't just go off and do 128 bars rapping. It's like,
but nobody wants to hear 128 bars.
No, nobody wants to hear it, and like, there's other people that want to come up too, you know.
Yeah. 8 bars. Give me 8 bars.
Yeah,
solid.
Yeah,
we're happy with that.
Exactly.
16, and it's amazing, awesome. And if you know to stick around, just make sure that you don't cut off and that's the thing too, is the relationship between vocalists and rappers. There's a bit of a struggle there, like, absolutely, where people that are like singerish, or they're like, oh, this music's like so beautiful, the beats are banging. Like, sometimes I'm listening to these beats, and then the people that decide to go on, unfortunately, because of like, the beat is amazing, and then the vocalists are going, it's like inexperienced, that doesn't know really, like, you can tell that they don't really know what it is that they want to do. They're trying to form their identity as a vocalist. Some come from like the jazz training, so there's like a little bit of the scatty, like,
you know, I hate that. That is the I hate it more than anything.
Fucking Al Jarreau is my personal hero.
Yeah, but Al Jarreau is not a hip hop artist. You know what I mean? It's like, I know exactly what you're talking about, but this is, when have you ever heard somebody scat in a hip hop setting?
Who are you talking
ever?
to? Who are you talking
I know.
to?
I'm not talking to. I'm just saying, like, I'm sorry. I'm venting. But
okay.
Yeah, I
You all right?
I had to get that out.
But those are the things, like, you're like, have you never listened to a hip hop chorus before? Yo, all you need for hip hop, it's as simple as one word. Like, think of Hip Hop Parade.
Yeah, there you go.
80% of that chorus is Hip Hop Parade, ho, hey, ho, hey,
and it's a freaking classic.
Hip-hop.
It's a classic. Yeah.
There's things like that you're like, damn, like, if they just had that framework to draw from, they could really, like, elevate their game. And that's what we all want to see. Like, I don't want to see poor performances. You know, my aspiration in urban science is not being part of like the call out culture, but like trying to make sure that we preserve a part of the thing that makes like the beats snap, and like that makes like rap. Like it's gotta be good. Like you gotta be on point. Can't come with that fuck shit. Like
I used to say this more. I mean, I think things have obviously improved a lot since the beginning, but I used to say a lot at the beginning that like, if this was a hip hop jam session in the South Bronx, there's some stuff that just would not fly. Like you'd get kicked off of, like literally kicked off of stage, you know? And there is no reason why we should allow those things at our jam session just because we're in Canada or Montreal. There is a polite way to, you know, to interrupt something.
I like the idea
like,
of tomatoes,
you know?
and iceberg lettuce, like
you
that
know,
old British. Like,
we've talked about
put
this
them
stuff.
Put them on the wheel, exactly.
Yeah. The cane, we need a hook. The cane with a hook, you know.
Like no front teeth.
Yeah. I don't remember.
A lot of soot and dirt on our faces when we like.
Exactly. when the show's over. I don't know if I told you this, but when I went to New Orleans last time, I went to a jam session that's very similar to the Cypher. I mean, there's a lot of different things about it, but one of the things, man, was the drummer had a drum pad, and one of the samples was somebody saying like, "You're done, wrap it up." And they would do that when people went on too long. They would just be like, "Get the fuck off stage, like you're done." You know? And I think that's like an American thing, you know?
Yeah, like you always hear about like the Apollo show, like those
exactly.
Shows. Yeah. It's like, damn, like like, people are like forget your music career, like you're done. You know, like that would kill anybody's ego. Like the way that they fucking howl at people, you're like, whoa. They might as well be tomatoes being thrown, you know?
Right? But those that survived, right? I mean, you must have seen the oh my god, I'm blanking on her name. From the Fugees, Lauryn Hill. Did you see Lauryn Hill at the Apollo? Yeah, it's amazing.
She got booed,
yeah, because she gets booed and she's like, fuck it, you know, and she just like struggles her way through, and they're booing all the way through. But when you see the way she just pushes her way through it, it's like, okay, this kid could actually do it because she can deal with that, you know. So that means you can deal with anything. You know what I mean? Yeah. She was like 16 or 18 like, or something. No. I think
it's a huge capacity. Apollo. It's got like at least 1,000 people. So
yeah,
I don't know. I think Montreal is soft on it too, because you're also soft. It's also soft on those kinds of like standards of excellence that we look for, because a lot of the kids that are coming up to the Cypher, some of them are younger and they don't have that experience either. Like like you said, that they're going through the school spirits. They're talented in what I figured, like they have some scope and some desire and some understanding of music, but they're not in touch with it on an emotional level, and that's a problem, you know. Like it's like hip hop's not just something you can like come and pick up. Just like I feel the same way about jazz. And
agree.
That's what you're gonna hear when something's hokey. You're like they're just not connected. Like there's lots of notes that are overlapping a whole bunch of things, but it's not really saying much. In the same way that you can have a strong message, really strong social justice message in a rap, but if you say it wackly,
right, then who cares?
Who gives a fuck?
Yeah,
who gives a fuck? Honestly,
yeah.
I don't, and I'm down for like I want to, you know,
right, the cause. You're down for the cause, but it's
I'm
so
super
badly
and
executed.
I show and prove. But when I'm standing with someone who's exactly executing it poorly, I don't want to be like I don't want that.
I don't want that. It's touching me.
Because my first impetus for being a rapper, for being a producer, was like I want to be sick.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's true to I feel like a lot of people that are heavily invested in any kind of music, they're like, I want to be the next level or the driving force, you know.
Well, it's just
but
like
in hip hop, it's like super concentrated. It's pivotal because it's like young kids. Like imagine like a young kid. If you go to the origin story, you have a young kid who, quote unquote, has nothing and is building something from nothing, which is not really true because they're drawing on all these things that were from the past, but still, you see what I mean? Like they don't have like access to a music program in school. They don't have access to a school because the whole block is burnt out or whatever, and they find creative tools of expression, and it unites a whole bunch of kids that would otherwise be at each other's throats.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the bravado and all the machismo and stuff that's highly criticized in hip hop is at the root of the nonviolence movement in New York at the time.
Yeah, that's true.
Like they're not trying to fix like patriarchy. They're trying to say they're conditioned by that. But I would rather they don't stab each other. I would rather they have a dance battle, and then whoever's the best wins. Who's the flyest wins. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that just removes a lot of like. Whereas now, the street, the value of like what street is or like how hard you are, weighs way more than your skill level.
Mm-hmm.
So like we're at the exact opposite of the spectrum of like what the forefathers of this music wanted to see happen with it as a movement, as a national movement. You know, they knew that it was going to be bigger than New York. But if you could imagine like, you know, 15, 16-year-old kids like uniting gangs in New York in the 70s, like fucking ballsy, like beyond belief. Yeah. Sometimes when I read the work, I'm like, oh my God, like the history is deep, man. Those kids had fucking balls, and they were hard as shit. They were hard as shit. Sorry, there was a mock there.
It's all good. It's all good. Yeah. No, it's and
so when someone that's not aware of that as well, like they're 40 years later, they're coming into a hip hop cipher and they're just like they're dabbling in it and thinking everything's all good. Sometimes I understand it rubs people the wrong way because it can be deep, like hip hop can be deeply personal and emotional for people. So it's not something to fuck with, you know, as like, it's not pop culture, you know, as much as pop culture wants it to be. Like, and a lot of the people that are really popular in the game today really have gone, like they dumb down their lyrics. They can do better, but they're like, it's not what sells. It's not what this is. Not so. I feel like you have to kind of strike a balance, you know, figure out to choose what from. And if you're an active listener and if you really want to be involved in hip hop music and production, then you got to go to the sources and you have to go like, there's a lot of work to look, you know, you got to look at a lot of production. There's so much variety in hip hop music production.
Absolutely.
But a lot of them, they all share fundamentals, and that's what you got to like learn how to listen for. And then when you go to the cipher, you can hear the common links between all these things, and you're like, okay, this is where I can fit this in. This is the space that I should be in, and then I should pull out because I need to leave space for like that. The horn chorus is coming in, and there's a singer that's about to come on, so maybe she would be a good fit. Let me give her the mic and like get off the stage. You know what I mean? Like common sense sharing and musical arrangement, like, but on the spot.
Well, it becomes common sense if you've done the research. When I say research, I mean listening to music. Really, is really what I mean. You know, like when we did the Big Frida, the double drums with Big Frida, that was probably the most research I did for any theme night, because it was really about getting into the style of the music as opposed to just replicating certain beats, you know, because they're not
impossible. It was impossible.
That's it. It's not like a 1-bar pattern or a 4-bar pattern. It's about how the song builds, what kind of breaks they use, like all that kind of stuff, more than
it was a 32-bar clap pattern.
yeah, you know, so you can't just loop
claps.
that, you know. Yeah. But I mean, that was awesome, and like that. I mean, I don't know how you felt, but I know that night, like by the not even the end of it, just by the beginning, I was like, oh my God, my brain is like rewired. Like I'm thinking about, because like this is not really a style. I mean, I'm familiar with the style, but I'm not like, I don't know it as much as I know other styles and other artists and in hip hop, you know, and. It becomes like an infection in your brain. You know, you get this sound that can't be taken out. But I really, it bothers me when people come to the cipher and they haven't done some very, I mean, that's a more homework than I'm expecting any jammer to do, but like just to know some, and when I say no, just to understand how to execute and how to have certain parts of the language inside of you. You don't have to have like crazy chops or whatever. You just have to know it's like the expressions of a language, you know, contractions and stuff like that. You got to know that stuff. You know, you don't have to know the the 12 syllable word. You just need to know the what's the word? The lingo. You got to know the lingo.
Yeah. And the lingo, like from a drumming perspective, the way I taught myself, aside from like just trying out stuff with Nomadic, was listening to breakbeat, you know, classic breakbeat records. I had a lot of DJ friends at the time, so they were very accessible. Like they had this thing called Tricky Breaks, like a lot of DJs that were really interested in like turntablists, I should say, not really DJs, that would juggle beats and stuff like that, and you just heard these like really wicked grooves. But the way that you know, like if you get these sample packs now, you'll get like a bunch of breakbeats and stuff. Like they're not going to be at an optimal BPM for you, for like a beat. So then you got to figure out like how to I want to slow it down. Like take all these things that you learn like from jazz or whatever, but like apply it in a hip hop context. Like take a bebop, take like a bar and a half of bebop, and then learn how to like smack it into like 2 bars, like stretch it out or narrow it down, and then loop that, and then learn how, like I said, like learn how to do equal simple variations, so that you really just all you're worrying about is feel and coming back on the one.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
And then after that you can graduate to like the trap stuff, because those are really complex rhythms, like syncopation.
That stuff actually does require a certain amount of technique.
And sometimes you might have the technique, but you don't have like the layout to do it. And sometimes you need, like, to be honest, like that's what I liked about the Big Fritas. Like it wouldn't have been possible with one drummer, to do it.
Right. Yeah.
You just can't have like it's like, and the aesthetic of playing live hip hop music just because you're playing a loop and the guy is rapping on it doesn't also mean that it's not gonna like achieve the realness, the status, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've all heard live band hip hop that just not happening. It was just, you know, I don't have to name bands for. I mean, we've, you know, so many. No, but you know what I mean. It's like the priorities have to be in the right place in terms of the music you're creating.
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard unhappy, I don't know, reggae music or whatever. You know, you got to be thinking about it's not about how good your drummer is on a technical, how fast he can play. Who cares how fast your drummer can play if you're playing reggae, for example? You know, like that's not the point. You know,
he's really good at rolls.
He's really good at rolls. Really good at rolls. You know?
Yeah. But he forgets to put the rim and the kick at the same time on the third drum beat. That's the only problem.
That's really the only problem. Do you want to talk a little bit about in the context of Cypher, like freestyling, writing hooks, like that kind of stuff? Yeah.
As far as I know, that when I participate in the Cypher, my main focus, you know, like if you're as like a host, and I think we've gotten better at it, is like we really try and do like stage manager. It's like kind of like stage manager slash, and you as well are involved in that, stage manager and also kind of like song arranger. Like we highlight the things that we like, because there's like obviously there's a relationship. Like I mean, the traditional relationship is like a beat and a vocalist, and like the vocalist doesn't communicate with the beat. The beat is just the beat, and the vocalist responds. But in the context of the Cypher, because it's live and there's all these possibilities and variables that come up, it's super important to like learn how to I don't want to say be in the moment, but learn how to be flexible. If you're coming with like riddens, learn how to like don't spit the verse exactly the way that you spit the verse on the beat that you wrote it to.
Mm.
Like you have to learn, and that's important for people that are writers. Is like I write. I tend to write very densely. A lot of I'm interested in multisyllabics. That's kind of like my go-to. But I don't like fast beats. I like 88 BPM. I like slower beats so that I can get that whole mouthful of things, but I can say it like cool, calm, and collected. That's like my favorite, with a little bit of attitude, obviously, a little sass. That's my favorite. That's my favorite place to be as an MC. And I like that zone also for instrumentalists to play, because it requires a lot of more listening than just like playing up tempo, like quick, like fast.
Right.
And I know that feeling because I've definitely fucking done like 120 BPM on certain songs that should have been like 90.
Yeah.
But just because of the feel, you're just like, so that's something that you learn as from being a drummer. And MCs find it difficult when they don't know which pocket to fit in. And if you're like a freestyler, like learn how to like freestyle choruses. And by that I mean like you also have to help like round out the song, like help the arrangement of the song, like. And the way I do it a lot in the cypher is like I'll just say like comment press, you know, like those like ones like I do like do you boo, like you don't have to try so hard, do you boo. That's all I said. That's one. You don't have to try so hard. Right?
Do you boo.
So that's 7 syllables, and then do you boo, that's 3. So and that's really important, like learning how to count syllables and how you write. Right? And create patterns. So create like a 7-3, 7-3, 7-3, 7-3. Do that like just as an exercise. And you'll start doing that. And when you start getting into freestyling, if you're into it, it starts being an important, not a crutch, but like an important base of like a reference that you can always like rely on. And that also helps with your timing. Do you have any specific
like kind of exercises or like limitations that you put on yourself when you freestyle? Like when you practice freestyling, are you like, I'm going to do like a 3-7-3 like syllable scheme or something like that?
No, with freestyling, like just the regular, like off the top, I tend to do it just with like, I let the beat dictate what it is going to be. And then I focus more on like how I fit naturally into things. And, but I think when you start doing like, for example, if you do like those, the list of words,
right,
and you're rapping over a beat or whatever, and you incorporate all those things, that gives you the necessary structure to figure out like, okay, like I got to make sure that I get back to that and stay on beat at the same time. So once you start mastering those kinds of things where you can just like, you start seeing connections and you start making you have to work that muscle a lot. Like I was a way better freestyler when I was like 18 to 26 than I am now. Right. Because I don't really dedicate time to it anymore. It's not something that you like, it goes away. Like you have to do it. Like you got to live it. You got to be doing it all the time. And it becomes part of your daily practice. Right. In the same way that like a guitarist like just goes like, yeah, exactly. Does all the, or like, you know, you guys play all your chords or whatever, or fix your reed or whatever the fuck it is that you need to do.
What the fuck
good.
You guys
sound good. Sound good. That's the point.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you're just saying that it's got to be part of you. You got to be working on that stuff all the time. You know, just like, you know, one of the reasons why your production skills have gotten so good is because you've been doing that all the time and you know, learning different styles, being forced to learn different styles, you know?
Yeah. I've seen it. And I've seen some cases like, I mean, unfortunately, you know, because after the birth of my goddamn daughters, I didn't spend a lot of time at the cypher, but there was people that I hadn't seen maybe in a year perform. But that I had seen, and I was like, I wrote them off kind of in this terrible old statesman kind of way, you know? And then like a year later, I was like, oh shit, it's not like not that bad. It really. So I respect the idea of it being like a learning space. Yeah. But but I hope that the community holds people more accountable to like a standard of excellence, you know, and
Well,
that
I think
it doesn't only come from us.
yeah, I think that you know, both us and other people must be doing a little bit of that because those people have improved. You know, I agree with you 100% that there's I agree with you 100% that I have made the incorrect judgment of dismissing somebody, being like, they don't have it. They just don't have what it takes, you know? And then, as time goes on, you know, weeks become months, become years. And I'm like, whoa, this person is not the person they were when they first came. You know? And,
even like you when you started when the whole concept started.
Absolutely.
Like,
absolutely. I've told everyone that the first cipher
I think you've learned. I think
terrible.
you've changed. I think you've changed. Was it terrible?
The very first one, I guarantee you it was fucking terrible. There's even a video that somebody made and edited and it was beautiful and they sent it to me and I'm like, I'm never releasing this. There's no way in hell I'm ever releasing this. It's so terrible. So
too much saxophone.
Too much saxophone. I agree. And just like, it wasn't hip hop at all, in my opinion, that first one. It was just like, anyway, that we learned, we developed, you know, we learned repertoire, right? We started really going deep into repertoire, and now we can call certain things and be like, we want this type of beat, we want, you know, a West Coast type of beat, or we want, you know, more of a dirty South, you know, a trap type of a vibe, or, you know, we can talk about these things instead of like every track being like kind of a jazzy hip hop type of vibe, or
right, which is the go-to. Which
is the default because of where we're coming from, you know?
Yeah.
I'm talking to the instrumentalists at this. But
we'll get a D major 7 with a
exactly.
Yeah.
But it was partly because you were always saying, like, guys, like one note. This was your famous thing, always saying like one note, just pick one thing, you know, and just do that one thing. And it's true. It's like simplifying. How many amazing hip hop beats are like one bar patterns, one bar. You know? One bar with maybe one change. Yeah, one variation that comes in here and there. At the end of like the eighth, it's like the eighth bar. The change comes, and that change only lasts for a bar, and then it goes right back. It snaps right back into a one. You know, and makes your neck like snap. Like that's something. That's what you have to like try and find how to do. You know, it's huge, man. I find it, and I find people underestimate the power of the simplicity of like hip hop music production. Like, I mean, you can see in the reaction. Like, if you watch a DJ set with people that like, you see how people react, and you know it's a global phenomenon. It's a genre that needs to be respected a little bit more for its musicality, like studied a little bit more. Like, I even think like these jazz schools, like, how the fuck do they not have like a hip hop program? Like, how's that even like one thing that I like about the 20 plus years of like people being on a par of excellence and of musical excellence, who have also brought back in like interest into quote unquote a dying genre, you know? Well, one of the things that I like about the way you've been verbalizing certain things from the beginning is you've been referring to it as BAM. Black American music, and I think especially now in light of the more recent violence and protests and whatever, people are starting to rethink certain assumptions that they've made, and there's been a lot. I'm on the Facebook group for the McGill Jazz whatever, and there was like a whole bunch of good suggestions being made with regards to, for example, having more Black people on the staff, teaching staff, and all those kind of things. Like, how can we be teaching jazz with like very few, and what I was going to say was that, bringing it back. Yeah. So the whole thing about BAM is just being like, jazz, hip hop, they're not the same thing, but they all come from the same root, and we have to be aware of where this music is coming from. And like, to a certain degree, I want to say, like, I don't want what has happened to rock to happen to jazz and hip hop, in the sense of like, people think of rock and roll as white music, but it's not.
But hey, for example, like here in Quebec, man, like or in France, you have like full out like huge rap scenes, and there's no Black people anywhere. Massive, like massive industry.
Yeah.
Like, how is this possible?
How is it possible? You know, and how are the big guys who are, because most of the older big guys are black, right? And then how are they still struggling to make a living when some fucking, 18-year-old,
There's that, yeah.
Yeah.
It's
My
just,
God.
I mean, that's the sour part. That's the sour part, but it's also like, I find it, that's the real sticking point. Like, it's I find it just extremely difficult. Like I have a moral problem with it, like it makes me like, whether it makes me angry or sick or both, I'm not sure, but I've been sitting in situations where I'm like, it's just like a shake your head, like it's a face palm. You're like, what the fuck? Like nobody has an idea of like where this shit comes from, what they're doing, what they're talking about. In the same vein where you got like, suburban kids that flash like gang signs and shit as like a cool thing, like people that don't deal with the consequences of things. That's the whole idea of like privilege and taking from something when it's convenient for you, but not really dealing with like the overarching consequences that come with it.
I agree completely. Again, it's kind of coming back to there's a recurring theme in what we're talking about in terms of knowing the history of whatever it is you're interested in, knowing the roots,
Like, and I learn, I don't pretend that I'm like, man, I learn things every day. There's things I forgot. Like there's things that I forget. There's things that I try and remind myself of. But my initial foray into BAM was through hip hop, and I think a lot of people that are on the other side that are really traditionalists about all these other variations of what we call BAM, I feel like sometimes they don't really respect hip hop in a musical sense, and I think that's something that's pretty negative, and that persists, especially in like the jazz circles and stuff like that. Like people hear it as really simple, but there's something to be said about the simplicity that like how attractive.
Well, I mean, when jazz got started, people dismissed it as simple, right? Same thing for everything. It was like, oh, that's just
like Do It to Death Part 2. James Brown.
Right.
The guitar lick and the bass line do not change. For 6 minutes.
Yeah. And it just gets better and better.
And I think they modulate once, and then they have like a couple of like bang bang bangs, and that's it, and it's the whole song.
Yeah.
And it's fucking dirty, man.
It's incredible.
That's it. Yeah. And that's why you gotta be like James Brown's the illest.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like you can't say you like hip hop and not like James Brown. It's crazy.
Right. Absolutely.
It becomes obvious as to why you're like, okay, they were listening to these records, and this is where they came from.
So it's midnight now. I know you're a father. You must be dying right now. You know what I mean? So I guess maybe I got a couple of last things we could go through, and then we'll wrap it up. I think, unless anybody who's tuned in has any questions for Butta, but I think that may not be the case. But let's see. I'm going to pull up just a couple of last things for Butta to kind of give us an explanation about. Can you tell us what this is all about?
What am I looking at here? Still Daryl Jones? Oh shit. All right. Such an idiot, Vince. That's in Cali, in San Pedro.
This is the Nomadic Massive Jazz Project, I think. That's what this is.
And that's me with a man bun before man buns were popular. Ahead of the curve. That's crazy. Yeah.
So what's the story behind this?
That we were in San Pedro, California. It was a show that was like last minute booked. Do you remember how bad
I remember all about this one.
Beside the music store?
Yeah.
And it was kind of like a strip mall. This random
it was
venue
like the one
like a
part,
strip
like the
mall
one, like,
shaped.
Yeah.
Right? It was fucking weird. And then we got in, and we were like, there's nobody going to be in the show. We did the sound. This is a sound check. And we were just like, we gave up, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I noticed like walking into the venue, I was like, there's no mention of us performing here today. Like there was no poster. It wasn't in the calendar. I mean, anyway, that was a whole thing. But we did at least get to mess around a little bit. There was another photo with like Isham rapping, but I couldn't find it. I just remember it back in the day.
So that's Lou on the drums, Lou Pienza on the drums, the guy Rugged MC, the original bass player for and MC for Nomadic on the saxophone, Sarah MK from the Community Family, who stepped into do like backup vocals, and also she did a couple verses. I think she was like rapping as well and stuff. Yeah. That was a fun leg of the trip. I remember that a lot. Yeah, remember when the Seals? Remember when I was talking to the Seals? Were you there?
The Seals. I don't think I was there for
you. Might have been sleeping.
Oh no, the park. I didn't go to the park.
I need to go find this Korean Afghanistani restaurant that I found. I was like, all right, we're gonna go to the park and get drunk.
I did go on a whole adventure with Vox trying to find a taco spot. That is true. Yeah, that is true.
I don't think there's any nomadic that didn't like wish they didn't go here to look for a restaurant that didn't exist.
But I think it was from this trip that you brought me back the In-N-Out Burger hat. I think it was from this one. Yeah, because I didn't get to go.
Yeah, it was really kind of. Yeah, and we also went to my friend's, our friend's family, and
oh my god, yes!
Long Beach. Then you got the crispy pata,
yes, which I smuggled back on the plane. That was incredible.
For anybody who doesn't know, crispy pata is a deep fried leg of pig.
It is the best. It is. All right, let me get a little. Actually, this is from the. Wait, is this the same trip, or maybe this was the first time?
But look, imagine this is the show. We did this show, and there was like nobody there. Remember? But then the 2 days before that, we did the
grand performances. I think actually,
grand performances. I think
that was actually a different
with the synchronized.
I think that was a different trip. I think that was the first trip to LA.
Oh, you're right.
And this was right. So actually, that was my next.
Oh no, we played at Echo Park.
Right, that's right. So this was my next thing. Was
that's post.
Super bus. What was it? What was it called? Super bus. Maybe. Yeah. I can't remember.
The transportation company is like hotels to airports type thing.
So tell us what happened to you here.
Well, we got into a fender bender, a very very fast fender bender. You know, like they smashed the shit out of that car. I remember.
Yeah, totaled.
The whole but yeah, so I was in the front and I just took it off my car seat. It's the second time that I've been in a car accident where I just took off my car seat, and we rammed into the back. I pumped the brakes too quick, and we went right into the back. And it was like 4 cars piled up together, and I went my face right into the edge of the back seat where I was, and my teeth went through my lips, so you can see those marks. You want to focus on my lips?
Sure. It was pretty bad.
It looks nice there because it looks like nothing, but it was.
No, but it was deep. It was like, yeah.
My face was like covered in blood.
Yeah. This was after you cleaned yourself up a little bit. Yeah.
On my way to the airport, when we almost missed our flight back home.
And after you had lost your wallet.
Yes.
And
great day. You can see the happiness in my eyes.
That's the face of best gig ever.
Yeah.
Let's see. What should I pull out next? I guess I'll pull out this one because this is like my favorite thing you've ever worn. I would really like to know what the story is with this. I don't think this was. I'd not been touring with the band at this point.
Yeah, you swore us off at that point, I'm pretty sure. We learned all our gangster from the government. It's a jacket I bought from, it was a local, I don't know if they still exist, well they do, but not in the same form that I knew them as. It's Atelier New Regime. It's a local streetwear company started by 3 guys. One of them that I know kind of like as an acquaintance, who's also connected to a lot of people that are intimately involved in community work and stuff like that. So it's on some righteous shit. And I really like the slogan, and I really believe in it. You know, And you know, my dad worked for the government, and I can tell you it's true.
That's where you learned it all. And I think I'll just
that's Mark Haynes in the back smoking a cigarette.
The legendary Mark Haynes.
Legendary Mark Haynes.
Absolutely. And yes, I mean, it's kind of redundant to put this up, but I love this photo, so I'm just gonna right on.
The Humpty Dump, man. Chaque, G.
Chaque B.
Check them out, guys.
Chaque B.
Chaque G. Yeah, Chaque B. But really, I think a very underrated producer. Those first two, like Sex Packets, it's an album that's like,
it's amazing.
Should be on. Yeah, it's really, really good.
Yeah.
You know, and he put on Tupac, so.
Yeah. I mean,
there's no fucking with them, really.
Yeah, it's you know, whenever it's something music that you've grown up with, I always one has grown up with. I always second guess my like in something. You know, I'm like, oh, do I just like it because I grew up with it and whatever, you know? But going back to Digital Underground, it's fucking amazing. It's so good.
You take like 10-year break from it, and you listen to the record, and you're like, wow, like, how come I'm not listening to this every day?
Yeah. Like by comparison, I mean, I don't think it's terrible or anything, but like I was into Two Live Crew when I was in high school, and listening back to it, I'm like, this isn't very good. Like, it's not terrible.
But it's amazing if you have a great bass system.
Sure.
Because there again, the impetus is different. Like, that's another cultural framework. Like, it doesn't all work under the New York mold where it has to be like lyricism first. And
I'm not saying that. I mean, I like music from all over. Like, I love Big Frida, and there's definitely not lyricism as a you know, in a traditional sense. Exactly, you know. But
this is the interesting thing. I think
didn't have
about
the energy that it had
South.
or the impact that it had when I was listening to it as a kid.
Yeah, you're saying me so horny all the time. Come on, dog.
And that's it. That's why I liked it as a kid. I'm like, this is great.
the sample from Full Metal Jacket, the movie.
Yeah, that's it.
I was like, these guys are out of control. Because I saw that movie much younger than I should have. Because I have an older brother, so I saw it earlier.
Yeah.
And I recognized the sample right away when I heard that song. I was like, holy shit.
Yeah. All right. And lastly, tell me about your new car.
So there it is. Dora, everyone's favorite Latina. No, it's just a toy car that we have in the back because I have 2 kids now. And I've been very discreet about putting that out there as well. It's just a weird thing. Like, on Facebook, I have like 2,000 friends, but like, I don't know 2,000 people.
No, exactly.
Tell you that much. And
you don't post about your kids in personal life very much.
I did that. I only did the one time on Instagram. If you check my Instagram, you can see my oldest daughter and my youngest daughter. Mm-hmm. That's the first and only time I really have. I plan on posting for a long time because I think kids are too vulnerable on the net. People are weird. Yeah, the little one, that's Kenya Amara, and yeah, she's coming up to 5 months old. That's my couch. That's my daughter, Sophia May.
Yeah.
Super cuties.
Growing up. But
so half Argentine, Guyanese. Then the baby mom is right there on the bottom there for all you bitches, you hoes.
There we go. Yeah, so maybe actually speaking of Argentine, I'll just leave this as the last image as I thank you for doing this wonderful live stream. This was from the CBC. Yeah, exactly. Another one of your passions. But thank you so much for being here, for giving some insight into ton parcours artistique, I guess, you know, and your life and all this kind of thing. It's hugely appreciated. We've known each other for actually quite a while, if you think about it. But you know, it's one of these things in music that
10 years minimum.
At least, you know.
Yeah. It's your birthday.
That's right. Actually, yeah, 2010. Yeah, you're right. So absolutely. But but it's one of those funny things where if you're not performing together, you don't see each other. And, you know, in the last couple of years, I haven't seen you quite as much, you know, because I'm not with Nomadic anymore. And also because you've got a family and all this stuff.
Well, you're also married too. So
I'm also married. Exactly. This everyone has limited time, you know. But also one of the things we didn't really talk about, but he has a degree in, is it a degree in fine arts or is it, or at least you studied it?
Yeah.
Concordia?
Well, yeah, I did. My major was in studio arts, so I did a concentration in painting and drawing. So that was my. And early on, in the burgeoning moments of that career, I had to make a choice between. I mean, I always wanted to be a musician, but I didn't have any, like, I never went to a music class in high school. I didn't have any music training as far as like an academic standpoint. So and I couldn't imagine myself leaving Romania early to be able to, like, I'd have to wait a whole year to audition to any of the credible music programs. And what instrument, I wasn't really sure. Like, I was like, I could maybe like do some piano, but I was like, I didn't want to be a piano player, you know?
Right.
I like piano for its like compositional and arrangement options, like I love, but I knew that I didn't have the dexterity for it. I knew I wasn't going to be like, I'm not going to play piano for 6 hours a day, like
right
to level up, like to where these people are, like you know, like I just felt like I respected the process too much, and I knew that I didn't have the full courage to step up into that place and be like, I'm a piano player, or like I'm a drummer. So I opted for another form of expression that I was like naturally like gifted at, I think, and which people told me, and I said I didn't want to go to university. I went for my parents, and it was like an immigrant dream.
Right.
I had no desire to, like, me and school have a long and torrid history, and Concordia was not that much different, but it also gave me an opportunity to like network with a lot of people that I wouldn't have otherwise met, which I'm very grateful for, honestly. Like, and it's cool. I mean,
that's how you met Dig Al and all these guys. It was through that symposium, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. So, you know, so Butta has this background in studio arts, and for those who don't know, he's also doing, well, I guess not now because we're on confinement break, but he's doing the flyers, the weekly flyers for Urban Science, you know, for the Cypher, and constant, you know, researcher into hip hop and producer and beat maker and all these kinds of things. Thank you for sharing all of your knowledge with us and experience.
Yeah, sorry if I rambled a bit, but
no, that's the point of this. That's the point of all this. Absolutely the point of this. So, Butta, thank you very much. Thank you for done. Are we live? Oh, what just happened? I don't know. Back? Oh, we are back. Okay. All right. Well, anyway, thank you everyone who was tuned in. Have a great night, and we'll see you next month, the next edition of Process.